If you want the full uncensored version without the blanks, head over to my Boosty and subscribe, or grab the full post for this story. The link is in the description and the pinned comment. The day in Konoha was just beginning. People were gradually filling the streets. Shops were opening and villagers were already lining up. Tsunade, Hokage of Konohagakure, admired the scene from her office. There was a knock on the door. "Come in," the Hokage answered cheerfully. A young, slender girl entered the office with a folder of documents in her hand. "Hello, Shizun." Tsunade stood up, hung her green cloak over the back of her chair and took the folder from her assistant. "So, these are our tasks, huh?" Shizun tucked a strand of dark hair and began her report. After finishing her report, she sat down opposite her superior and awaited her instructions. Tsunade reluctantly began shuffling through the papers in the folder. They were mostly diplomatic letters from other villages, plans for purchasing food from farms, ANBU reports, etc. "Damn, a lot of work today." "That's not all, Tsunade-sama." "Not all?" The Hokage's brown eyes looked at Shizun with interest. "What else?" Shizun blushed for a moment. "You see. The shinobi of the Nth graduating class of the Ninja Academy have reached the age of 18. Tsunade looked at her interlocutor in bewilderment. However, she immediately understood everything. "So, it's already time to organize the family celebration?" "I haven't thought about it, but we'll have to do it, the rest of the business can wait." "What do you think about this, Shizun?" "Tsunade-sama," the girl blushed, "I think. Maybe. Well." The Hokage slammed her fist on the table. "Shizun, speak frankly, pull yourself together. It seems to me this event should be cancelled." The Sannin stood up and cast a stern look at her assistant. "I understand you, but this tradition was introduced by our ancestors and they had very compelling reasons for it. Who are we if we don't follow our ancestors' teachings?" She turned to the window. Silence hung in the air. It was broken by Tsunade's chuckle. "What is it, Tsunade-sama?" The Hokage turned around and explained, "Oh, nothing, I just remembered how you spent it." Shizun blushed for the third time and screamed. "Like a child, Tsunade-sama." Okay, her mentor hastened to reassure her, "You can go do your work." When the girl closed the door behind her, Tsunade sat down at the table. She leaned back in her chair, clasped her hands behind her head and thought, and how will Naruto spend this day? Mikoto Uchiha was busy with her daily chores. Cleaning, laundry, cooking, it all brought on boredom. And now she was sitting in the kitchen this morning, watching the next dish simmer on the stove. Fugaku and Itachi had long since left for work. Only she and Sasuke, who was asleep in his room, were left home. "Maybe I should go visit my friends," she said quietly, watching the birds frolicking outside the window. "By the way, what's the date today?" Uchiha approached the calendar and checked the date. "Oh," her eyes widened in surprise, "is today family day?" With all this mundane life, it's easy to lose track of the days and not notice how one of the village's most important holidays has crept up on her. Mikoto resolutely headed to the bathroom to freshen up before her son woke up. A warm shower immediately brought a pleasant calm to her body. Mikoto rinsed herself off, anticipating the coming freshness. With characteristic feminine grace, she jumped out of the shower stall. She combed her long black hair, applied essential oils to her skin, and felt completely renewed. But a feeling of anxiety suddenly appeared. Food. How could she have forgotten about cooking? Mikoto rushed to the kitchen, hoping she wasn't late. Uncovering the lid, the woman sighed with relief, the dish was cooked just right. While she was tasting, the sound of muffled footsteps reached her ears. Sasuke came up from behind and hugged his mother. "Good morning." "Good morning," Mikoto replied, shuddering slightly from her son's embrace. "It smells delicious. What are you cooking today?" The boy buried his face in his mother's hair and sniffed lightly. "Ramen. I wonder if he knows about today." The woman thought, his touch is more like a man's touch to a woman than a son's touch to a mother. Meanwhile, His hands had slipped under her apron and were caressing her body through her dark purple blouse. His palms moved up and down, not missing a single centimeter. They moved up her stomach, lightly touching her, and then down again, touching her skirt and pressing it to her. Mikoto was surprised to note how strong her son's hands were. In them, she felt like a little girl, not a formidable kunoichi. Sasuke turned her to face him. He looked into his mother's eyes, radiating curiosity. Each clan has its own secrets and peculiarities, visible only to members of the clan. For the Uchiha, these are the eyes. Other people are unlikely to notice the difference in the eyes between two Uchiha. To them, they will still be cold, mysterious, and possibly cruel. However, the Uchiha saw a whole gamut of emotions in each other's eyes. That's why they never called their eyes black, but compared them to the colors found around them. For Sasuke, his mother's eyes seemed like the night sky, where amethysts glowed instead of stars. A brief pause was interrupted by Mikoto untying his apron. It fell to the floor, where a slight movement of her foot tossed it aside. He placed his hand on her shoulder and pressed gently, hinting at what would happen next. The Uchiha supported this decision, knelt down, and began untying his belt. Soon, he was finished, after which the mother removed her son's pants and tossed them aside. Right before her face stood a pail, hard, untouched by chafing. Apparently, its owner devoted a great deal of time to training, sparing no time for his device. A thrust, and the bloodshot head rushed toward her mouth. Mikoto barely had time to open her lips when he entered halfway into her mouth. A look of surprise lingered on her face for a moment, but was quickly replaced by confidence. She wrapped her lips tightly around him and moved her head back and forth, feeling her son stroke her hair. While his mother worked her lips and tongue diligently, Sasuke groaned softly. Hearing the pleasure rising in her son, Mikoto began to help with her hand. The woman's gentle palm quickly slid along his member from pubis to mouth. Sasuke languished in a fire of passion, fueled by his mother's actions. Mikoto's hands were very gentle, and if you add her mouth to them, it could all end quickly. Too quickly. I want this to last as long as I want, the boy thought and stopped the woman. Did I do something wrong? The Uchiha said in surprise. You're doing everything well, but I want to last longer. Okay, then let your rest for a bit, but I won't let you go without experiencing pleasure in a moment of respite. Mikoto grabbed the hem of her blouse and began to undress. Sasuke unconsciously activated his Sharingan, allowing him to fully enjoy the view for a little while longer. First, a beautiful stomach appeared, so white and pure, as if sculpted from marble, but it only got better. Unable to maintain his mask of detachment, Sasuke watched greedily as the bottoms of her, like enormous pearls, appeared, then the soft pink areolas of her, and then her entire, were revealed, large, firm curves. Mikoto Uchiha's beauty was well known beyond the clan's domain. Truly, a woman worthy of the clan's head. Pride flared within him, knowing he was among the few worthy of seeing her completely. Mikoto adjusted her hair. She sat in only her skirt, looking at her son. His eyes were positively ablaze with desire. What was going through his head right now? Was he pondering her beauty? Or maybe he was thinking about what he was going to do with her. Do I have a beautiful bust? The woman asked playfully, breaking the silence. Absolutely. The boy touched her. So warm, velvety, and supple. His mother rarely wore at home, so sometimes her firm, still protruded through her clothes. Sasuke always secretly watched this and experienced unusual sensations. Later, of course, he realized it was arousal. But now, finally, he could see this maddening beauty without clothes. My knees are a little numb, time to stretch them. Mikoto stood up and winked, will you let me be on top? You'll have time later. Sasuke turned her around. He lifted her skirt. A smile appeared on his face. He was not mistaken, her ass was no less beautiful than her. Just as firm, tender, and with stunning curves. Few of my peers can compete with her, the boy thought happily. The Uchiha eagerly awaited her son's next move. She gently shook her buttocks in anticipation. How long she had waited for this day to test her son's skills. Previously, she had feared he was inexperienced, perhaps even shy, as not a single rumor of his amorous escapades had reached her ears. However, today he debunked that myth. But all her thoughts were interrupted by a slap on her right buttock. It was hard enough, searing enough that the woman let out a groan in surprise. Then the same thing happened to her left. Sasuke watched with pleasure as red marks from his hands appeared on the fair skin of his mother's backside. All his inner fire was seething. His hands began to tremble slightly with desire, and the boy gave in to his passion. Not a moment passed before Mikoto's hands were behind her back, clutched in one of her son's. His fingers dug tightly into her wrists. The woman realized her son was barely controlling himself. "You've really got your blood pumping, thanks to me," the Uchiha thought playfully. With his other hand, Sasuke guided his, directly into his mother's womb. The sensitive flesh was generously lubricated with arousal, so the head slid inside easily. Her head spun with anticipation. The internal fire turned into an explosion, and the boy lost all self-control. With a sharp thrust, he slid the full length of his inside. Immediately, the entire house was deafened by the of his mistress. Mikoto felt her legs tremble. She wanted to fall, unable to stand after such a rush of sensations. She tried to free her hands, to herself on the table to ward off loss of balance, but the fingers held her tighter. Moreover, her son's other hand grabbed her, and squeezed in a fit of passion. Another involuntary. "Let go, my legs won't hold me," the Uchiha whispered, frightened. "No, I won't let you fall." Sasuke thrust again, and the was repeated. The boy pulled his lover's arms tighter and rapidly moved his pelvis. His easily pierced her tender. The room was filled with the sound of male body slapping against female. Sasuke had never felt this with any woman, of whom there had been many before this moment. It was as if he had become an Oni, an ancient demon from legend. Life force burst forth, forcing his body to quicken its pace and cast aside any pity for this woman, who had become a limp doll in his hands. The boy felt his mother's legs tremble with every thrust, how they shook from the friction of his, how she tried to sit up, and his hand prevented her from doing so. "Why your will is fiery." Mikoto tried with all her might to speak, but the escaping her throat made it difficult, so strong. Sasuke felt his hands getting wet with sweat. Soon she would slip out and everything would be interrupted. He couldn't let that happen. Without withdrawing his, he moved her closer to the table and let go. Mikoto fell onto the table, and the man's hands closed on her snow-white thighs, squeezing them so hard they turned red. "Stop. No way." The boy gave himself over completely. Feeling like a demon, he mercilessly and furiously, his woman. She lay exhausted on the table, softly. The scent of feminine lubrication filled the room with passion and gave Sasuke strength. His clan lacked stamina, but now it didn't feel that way. Desires went to his head and gave him cherished strength. His son's uncontrollability unconsciously reminded her of her coming of age. Streams of pleasure stirred memories of her past youth. Every thrust, every slap made her, as if she were still the same kunoichi who had just come of age. But soon. It would be over, you could tell by the rhythm. The intervals between thrusts grew longer, and the pressure weakened. There was very little left. Sasuke put all his strength into his final thrust. His, as deep as it would go, and erupted a hot load of. Mikoto let out a final. The boy pulled away from the woman and, on rather tired legs, made his way to the nearest chair to rest. The Uchiha looked at his lover, drenched in sweat and, her thighs flushed, her skirt wrinkled, her face simultaneously tired and satisfied. "Father was right, you're more talented than your brother," she said, rising on trembling hands. "What could be better than basking in the rays of the morning sun?" Ino Yamanaka loved to lie down and relax after sleep. The fragrant flowers growing on the windowsill also helped. The Yamanaka clan, surprisingly, had an excellent command of not only the human mind, but also flowers. A few minutes later, she was standing in front of the mirror, examining herself from every angle. A young, beautiful girl looked back at her from the other side of the glass. Ino admired all the virtues nature had bestowed upon her. There wasn't a single spot on her that didn't exude beauty. A pretty face, she didn't even need makeup, a graceful neck, long white hair, firm, decent-sized, few could boast even that, a slender waist, luscious, rounded buttocks, a neat, clean-shaven, and graceful legs. What more could a girl need to feel like a beauty queen? But thoughts of business forced her to end her narcissistic escapade. Today promised to be a busy day. Ino got dressed and ran to make breakfast. The bacon sizzled as it hit the hot pan. A couple of eggs soon followed. Bacon and eggs are her father's favorite breakfast. Her mother had had a busy day yesterday, so Ino happily took on the task of making breakfast. She quickly chopped a simple salad for herself. Inoichi Yamanaka, drawn into the kitchen by the delicious smell of fried eggs, was surprised to see his daughter at the stove. "Why are you up so early?" His daughter turned around and greeted her father. "I'm just getting ready for work and helping my mother." "Oh, right," he rubbed his sleepy eyes, "I completely forgot you were standing in the store today." The girl put the food on her plates, ate her breakfast, and went to get dressed. A purple top and skirt, and green sandals, her everyday clothes quickly appeared on her, and she hurried outside. The pleasant coolness and fresh air assured her that today would be a wonderful day. The walk to the flower shop was short, but Ino decided to arrive early, as she was allowed to arrange the flowers in the display case to her liking. The manager thoughtfully left the flowers on the counter. The girl happily inhaled the wonderful scent emanating from this flower wall and got down to business. "Oh, hello." Ino turned at the familiar voice and saw Sakura. "Having been working since morning? Can you really call something you love work?" The friends hugged. "Where are you going so early?" Sakura showed her medical bag. "Yes, Tsunade-sama gave me a task at the hospital. Easy, but tedious." When Ino finished, they went inside to move the rest of the work to the courtyard. Sakura was happy to help. The friends chatted and gossiped for a while until the store opened. "Good luck with the sales." Haruno left the store and went about her business. Meanwhile, Yamanaka took her usual place behind the counter. In the morning hours, there are always few customers. Most people go to work, but occasionally young men come in to buy beautiful bouquets for their passions. So the girl spent her free time leafing through magazines on fashion, flowers, and medicine until the bells rang, indicating a customer. "Hello, I need a bouquet for a girl," a typical guy, not the most expressive in appearance, but not ugly either. Describe her. This was, in a way, a specialty of Ino. Based on the description of the girl's character and traits, she could choose the perfect bouquet that was sure to please. "Well, she's gentle, beautiful, mischievous. Is that enough?" Yes, the girl walked past bouquets of all shapes and sizes until she stopped at pink flowers with lush emerald foliage. "Here, this one will do perfectly." The guy paid and left. At the entrance, he met Inoichi Yamanaka. He made way for the customer and entered, closing the door behind him. Her father was wearing his dark green military vest as always. The girl returned to her usual tasks. "Hello, dearie, how are things going?" he asked, looking around. "Just the usual." Inoichi walked up to the stand with roses and sniffed one. Perfect, it was his favorite flower. "Do you know what day it is today?" Ino didn't pay any attention to his words and, without looking up from her magazine, answered, "No, why not?" Her father raised his finger to his head and used a technique for transmitting information. Yamanaka was not prepared for this and was taken aback. It took her a moment to process all the information she had received. The magazine fell from her hands. "Why, so we should do this?" Ino couldn't believe her thoughts. Maybe Dad was joking. Maybe she misunderstood. But one look at his face was enough to understand, he was not joking. "Don't worry, my dear, everyone in our village goes through this, and we especially." The girl froze. Shock paralyzed her. It was hardly fear, but rather the unusual nature of the information and its abrupt delivery that had this effect. Her father came over to calm his daughter. "Understand, my dear, there comes a time," he hugged her around the waist, when the bud of our clan needs to bloom, and it is simply necessary. Don't be afraid, I will not harm you. Ino was still lost in her thoughts until her father carefully led her to the utility room. He turned on the light and locked the door so that uninvited guests would not disturb them. What do you think about this? Inoichi kissed his daughter tenderly, but she did not react. Yamanaka shyly lowered her eyes and blushed. I don't think it's bad. His hand touched her cheek and raised her to his eyes. Green eyes met turquoise ones. The censor kissed the girl again. This time she responded, albeit hesitantly. He moved lower and kissed her neck. Ino shuddered from the tickling, but her father didn't stop. His hands landed on her hips and gently squeezed them. You're such a beauty, you take after your mother and me. Yes, I know, Dad, she returned to kissing, feeling her father's hand slip under her skirt. Should I take it off? Yes, go ahead. The girl complied with her father's request, removing her sandals at the same time. She was left with a pair of lacy pink. Inoichi shook his head contentedly, looking at the beautiful, and part of her luscious bottom. His daughter, seeing her father's interest, turned around and wiggled her backside, fully displaying her assets. The censor knelt down. He was so tempted by that bottom that he wanted to spank it. However, could he really lay a hand on his precious daughter? A better idea occurred to him. Ino felt her, being pulled down to her knees. Then her father's lips touched her. A soft "oh" reached the ninja's ears. She probably doesn't even know it's possible to give pleasure like this, he thought. Another kiss, after which a tongue appeared and ran along the pink hole, leaving a wet trail. Then Inoichi pressed harder into the space between her buttocks, actively working his tongue. Yamanaka knew that other workers might be nearby, who occasionally dropped by, so she tried to contain all sounds of pleasure. Only smacking sounds were barely audible in the storage room. While he was working on her ass, she helped herself with her fingers, carefully caressing her tiny. "My beauty," came another compliment from her father. Inoichi turned his daughter around and continued oral caresses, but this time from the front. The tip of his tongue teased the tender flesh of her, pausing to make circular movements around it. Ino had to cover her mouth with her hands to prevent herself from. Her facial skin flushed with excitement, while the area between her and labia grew engorged. This heightened sensitivity, and the pleasure grew stronger. The father heard his daughter's heavy breathing and saw how she struggled not to. A youthful passion awakened within him. His tongue began to move faster, pressing harder against the swollen nub. To contain the influx of sensation, the girl tried to close her legs, but his hands not only prevented her from doing so, but actually spread them further apart. Ino couldn't help herself. Inoichi stood up, looking as if he had achieved his goal and won. The girl looked at him with satisfaction and said playfully, "I didn't know you could get so much pleasure with your tongue." Her father chuckled and kissed her passionately. She took the initiative without any hesitation and removed her father's pants. The kunoichi lightly ran her finger over his. "Do you want to put it inside me?" "Of course, I really need to strip you completely." There, he grabbed her top with his hands and yanked it open. Nothing was holding back her young and beautiful, which bounced and froze in their natural position. Inoichi allowed himself to admire this beautiful view for a moment, firm, toned, with soft pink. "Excellent, now your ass," he turned his daughter to face the wall. Ino tried to turn around, but her father didn't let her. "But I've never tried." "There. Don't worry, I'll do everything right," Yamanaka reassured her. "The main thing is, relax." The girl, herself against the wall with her hands and arched her back to make entry more comfortable, remembering to spread her legs wide, just as her father had taught her the position. A handy skill to use, saving time on explanations. Inoichi pulled a metal jar from his pouch. He opened it, it contained a clear ointment, a lubricant. He lubricated his, and his daughter's opening, then put it back. "Now we can begin the main action," Yamanaka thought, guiding the head of his, toward the girls. Everything went smoothly. First, the head touched the surface of the opening. Then, a slight pressure, and, began. Gradually, pressing gently, Inoichi almost, the entire length. He waited a moment for her ass to adjust. Ino was surprised. She expected discomfort, maybe even pain, but everything went like clockwork. It's a special lubricant, her father explained, it helps prevent any unpleasant sensations or discomfort. The sensor moved smoothly and carefully as he adjusted. When he finally felt entry coming much easier, he began to increase the tempo. Gradually, he settled into a rhythm, just like during traditional. Even now, he controlled himself like an experienced ninja, enjoying not only the process but also the beautiful view unfolding before him, a slender back with smooth skin, firm, shaking with each thrust, though he only saw them from the side. However, that was enough. How beautiful you are. The girl continued to cover her mouth with her hand. She felt the size of her father's, with her whole being, how easily he entered her, and how easily he withdrew. An extraordinary combination of sensations. Occasionally, an involuntary groan would still escape, but she managed to suppress it. With a final thrust, Inoichi, directly into her ass without pulling out. Ino shuddered from the unexpected release of hot fluid. Yamanaka turned his daughter toward him and gave her one last passionate kiss before getting dressed. She quickly cleaned herself up and followed him out of the closet. This day promised to bring many more. Orochimaru's hideout was, as always, shrouded in an atmosphere of mystery and subconscious horror. His chakra experiments were so unnatural, immoral, and horrific that they spread the emotions of his victims' suffering into the immediate vicinity. The dragon's head, serving as the entrance, lent a special symbolism to the place. Kintsuchi was still grateful for the cursed seal her master had left behind, protecting her from all this negative foreboding. She carried a rather heavy backpack with the medicines and reagents needed for Orochimaru-sama's experiments. She cast the combination seals that served as the password for entering the hideout. The dragon's upper jaw lifted, granting access. Kin confidently stepped inside, remembering to cover her nose to prevent the pungent smell of chemicals from knocking her off her feet. At least, not at the entrance. The kunoichi of sound always marveled at how her teacher managed to build so many hideouts, especially unnoticeable ones. Politics in the right hands can do anything, was Orochimaru's invariable answer to such questions. After traversing several hundred meters of tunnels, Tsuchi reached the right door. This was her mentor's office, and everyone returning from a mission was required to enter here. With his usual responsible researcher's manner, Orochimaru recorded the results of each of his subordinates' missions, then assessed their usefulness to him. Those who failed had the chance to become the next test subjects. However, the girl had no doubt about her destiny, she always completed the missions assigned to her. And this delivery was no exception. "Enter, Kin," the mentor replied in a hoarse voice, sensing his student's approach. She entered a spacious office, the walls of which were lined with bookshelves, crammed to the brim with journals, reports, and notes. Surprisingly, the furniture was exquisite, demonstrating that its owner was, first and foremost, a scientist with a keen eye for aesthetics. "Put the backpack on that table," the master commanded. The girl did as he was told and silently awaited a reward. At the very least, praise. There was a pop. Before Kin could even process it, she found herself in midair. She reflexively shifted and realized she was tightly bound. Her mouth was also covered, so all she could manage was a panicked, "What's going on? Did I make a mistake somewhere?" Impossible. Orochimaru-sama ignored him, continuing to fill out reports. Try as she might, the kunoichi couldn't do anything. The only thing she realized was that she wasn't being held by ropes, but by snakes whose bodies hung from niches in the ceiling. About 2 minutes passed before her mentor looked at her. "I see you're scared, don't be afraid," he said in a snake-like voice. "You probably think you've failed somewhere and I'm going to punish you now." Kin's eyes expressed the horror she felt about this situation. Beads of sweat appeared on her forehead from the tension. "Is he really going to punish me?" "Anything but that. Don't kill me." "Then you're wrong. I trust you completely too." "Is this a prank?" If so, Orochimaru-sama, you have a bad sense of humor, Kin thought with relief, but the feeling of anxiety was still present. But you see, Orochimaru, his lips, not taking his snake-like gaze off her, I recently discovered another secret of chakra, its qualitative change after, with a shinobi. Your chakra is ideal for improving my, what? What do you want to do to me? And by coincidence, today is the family festival, and all of you, in a sense, are children to me. A small chuckle was heard. However, I have no desire to deal with this personally, so I present to you something. A creaking sound was heard from the ceiling. Kin looked and saw new niches opening. Segmented metal fell out of the impenetrable darkness. Each of them had a blunt and rounded end. The mentor formed a seal with 2 fingers and came to life. I'll look more closely. Orochimaru smiled and walked around his student. With a few movements of the blade, he freed her lower torso from her clothes. One of the appeared in front of the girl's face. Very flexible, thanks to the segments, and covered with tiny pores at the end. Tsuchi saw an oily liquid begin to ooze from the pores, as if it could sweat. This is my new development. A hint of pride crept into the Sannin's speech. Manipulators 4, out chakra released during. And the moisture you see is lubrication mixed with powerful aphrodisiacs. They will do all the work for you and me. Let's not delay, let's begin. That had been in front of the girl's face moved behind her. Kin realized what was about to happen and twitched, trying, if not to free herself, then at least to prevent it. But the snakes wouldn't budge. Something cold and round touched her. It's about to happen, the kunoichi thought resignedly and, herself. Orochimaru stood behind his charge, watching this scene. Obeyed him implicitly, but for them to carry out his commands most accurately, he needed to control them from close proximity. This flaw must be corrected in the future, he noted. Before his eyes, entered the girl's womb. Thanks to the good lubrication, it her to the required length without any problem or pause. The movements were slow, so to speak, at a gentle pace. The missing Nin knew all the peculiarities of his subjects' bodies perfectly, including the depth of their intimate organs. Kin muttered incoherently, trying to scream. Orochimaru paid no attention to this, as the aphrodisiac would soon take effect. The device's movements caused the woman's body to spasm slightly, but soon ceased, having become accustomed to them. The substance took effect, and the subject's tension subsided. It was time to move on to the next step. Increase the tempo from 1 to 4, the mentor mentally ordered. Holding the seal. The mechanism obeyed and moved noticeably faster. Natural lubricant, mixed with artificial, dripped onto the floor and formed a small puddle. Tsuchi no longer tried to speak, but breathed heavily with arousal. The Sannin gave another mental command, and the second became active. It approached her ass and smoothly, her. A second dose of the aphrodisiac should speed up the process. Moreover, contains numerous nerve endings, and their stimulation will only help to obtain high-quality chakra. When the second opening was developed, also increased its speed. The mechanical moved in sync. When one exited, the other entered, and vice versa. Thanks to the arousal, there was no resistance. Kin, like a doll, hung calmly and passively accepted these mechanisms. This sight aroused Orochimaru himself. Despite his proclamation of reason's triumph over emotion, the latter were not foreign to him. But he suppressed the feeling. This wasn't a game, but a serious procedure. The Sannin was glad he'd added a gag to this plan, otherwise the subjects uncontrollable would have distracted him, as they had during the testing stages of a similar device. The perineal area flushed with the increased blood flow. The missing Nin had become quite familiar with this process, so he knew it was time to increase the speed slightly and activate the vibration mode. Fulfilled his instructions. A buzzing sound joined the slurping sounds of Kin's red, glistening labia continued to force Orochimaru to fight his nature. A wave of tremors ran through the girl's body, covering her skin with goosebumps. Then another. And another. Tsuchi's spasms forced the snake-like ropes to squeeze her tighter. The mentor's serpentine eyes narrowed in anticipation of He prudently stepped aside, and it happened. A splash of liquid, despite the, erupted from her womb. A final, managed to break through the gag. The metal, stopped, smoothly exited the kunoichi, and hovered in the air. A beep emitted from them, indicating that sufficient chakra had been gathered. Orochimaru smiled contentedly. At his command, the snakes lowered the girl to the floor. That's it. You're free. Orochimaru dragged Kin's limp body into the hallway and left her there. The girl didn't immediately come to. Her entire body was shaking. Tsuchi barely managed to rise. Her only thought was to quickly get to her room and fall asleep. Helping care for the sick at the hospital is a regular occurrence for Sakura. It's part of her daily routine, and Tsunade-sama only supports this decision. In the ninja world, every medic counts, and a talented medic, especially one trained by the great Sannin, is truly invaluable. With such a title, Haruno can not only bring glory to her clan but also enjoy the support of any country she desires. No one, not even her partners, not even Tsunade-sama, knows what goals this medic has set for herself. And there's plenty of scope for her. Fortunately, medics are underestimated in this regard. No one would suspect any danger in this fragile girl who treats ulcers, blisters, and injuries. It's midday. Everyone has been assigned to their rooms and given their medication. There's practically no work left for today, so Sakura hoped to leave early. She had to get a perfect report card on Tsunade-sama's exam in a month. A nurse interrupted her thoughts. Sakura, your mother is here to see you. Ask her to wait, I'm busy right now. Okay, it will be done. The girl lost her temper for a moment. The only person she couldn't contradict, the one she obeyed not just for show, but for real, had come today. Right here. This couldn't be it. Maybe she should leave quietly. No, the nurse would tell her now, and she would know her daughter had been warned. Okay, Sakura reassured herself, I'll go about my business, maybe I'll take some more, and my mother will leave without waiting. Time passed. The woman in the reception area combed her blonde hair several times, read the entire magazine, but her daughter still hadn't shown up. What the hell is going on? Her mother has been waiting here for a long time, and she hasn't even moved, Mabuki thought, clenching her teeth in anger. I don't care, I'll go to her myself. The kunoichi realized that everything had gone wrong when she saw her mother striding resolutely down the hallway toward her. She had never seen her so angry, and all her inner confidence instantly evaporated. Do you even know how long I've been waiting for you? The woman immediately attacked her daughter. I'm sorry, Mommy, Sakura's voice trembled, it's just that things were beyond. Half-hearted excuses had no effect. Her mother silenced the culprit with a single glance. Damn it, not in front of everyone, Haruno remembered that the wards with patients surrounded them. She blushed with shame and lowered her eyes. The only thing she could utter was, Mom, let's not do this here, not in front of everyone. The kunoichi led her mother to an abandoned room that had been empty for a long time. There, no one would disturb them or see the shame of the promising medic. Can't you spare me a few minutes? Do you even know what day it is? Go ahead, yell, get angry, let off some steam and let's talk like normal people. Sakura stuck to the only correct tactic and listened silently, looking guiltily at the floor. Mabuki continued to torment her for a few more minutes before exhaling. The kunoichi knew this sign, it meant her mother had vented all her anger. But you know, the woman's voice softened again, you still need to be punished. I haven't done a good job raising you, so it's high time I made up for it. Sakura sensed a hint of excitement in her voice. It took her a few moments to understand the obvious hints. She knew what day it was, of course, but she hadn't expected it to happen right at work. What, right here, on the rainbow? The girl didn't have time to finish, as Mabuki suddenly appeared next to her. She gently pushed her daughter's face upward with her finger so that their eyes met. The kunoichi saw the strange gaze of the aroused housewife. So this is how her father sees her before, Haruno thought, watching her own mother devouring her with her gaze. I get so excited when I'm furious, the woman whispered in her ear. It all happened too quickly. Later, Sakura associated this moment with shame, because she couldn't resist at all and only obediently followed all her mother's demands. Mabuki pushed the medic Nin onto the bed. The frightened look of her numb daughter aroused the woman even more. She felt the heat between her legs intensify. Without hesitation, she took off her pants and, remaining in a white dress. "Do you know what awaits you now?" she said playfully, lifting the hem of her dress. The woman approached the bed. She pulled her daughter up so that she lay down with her legs dangling. She climbed on top of the girl and moved towards her head. "Mom, what are you?" Her mother cut her off, sitting right on her face. Later, Mabuki remembered her daughter's frightened face with pleasure, imagining it at every opportunity for arousal. Moist, hot labia touched Sakura. She tried not to show her disgust, but it wasn't very successful. Fortunately, her mother couldn't see what was going on under the hem of her dress. "Come on, daughter, show me all your skills." The girl complied, but not right away. It took her a little time to get used to the situation. However, the woman's fidgeting quickly brought the kunoichi back to her senses. She stuck out her tongue and ran it along her labia. The mother liked it. She ran her hand through her pink hair and settled more comfortably. "Maybe I should please you too, Sakura." The medic Nin couldn't help but do her job with her tongue. The woman, her fingers and pulled her hand back. Sakura felt the hand, first under her dress, and then under her pants. Wet fingers touched her. Mabuki stroked the girl's sensitive nub and moved her hand even further. "Oh, you're already wet, my dear," the mother smiled when she found the entrance to her. 2 fingers easily, inside. The kunoichi stopped. Immediately, she felt her mother's hand grab her hair. "I didn't let you stop." The hand sped up. The fingers actively stimulated the walls of her. They periodically came out to stroke her, but soon returned to her womb. The internal heat noticeably increased. The housewife had no idea that her daughter's oral caresses would excite her so much. Sakura was no longer simply her, she had her mother's hole with her tongue. The older Haruno. She liked the kunoichi's initiative. She gently stroked her daughter's hair, as if rewarding her for doing the right thing. The woman pressed herself even closer to the girl's face, allowing her tongue to, as deeply as possible. Unable to restrain herself, her hips began to move back and forth. Soon, Mabuki stood up. Stirred by her daughter's tongue, she climbed off the bed. A short respite. Then she pulled the kunoichi towards her so that she was sitting on the floor. "Round 2, my dear," the woman said, turning around. Sakura, still reeling from the experience, saw her mother's ass in front of her. The woman stepped back and pressed herself against her daughter. The kunoichi's face ended up between her buttocks. Her rather tired tongue was once again called upon to satisfy her mistress's desires. This will be a long time, Haruno thought doomedly. One of Mabuki's secrets is her great love of oral. Haruno can sit on a woman's face for hours. Her husband has repeatedly tested this on himself. Who would have guessed what lies behind the housewife's facade? And now she's making her daughter pay for her disrespect in this way. The woman sensed her daughter was growing tired. Her tongue no longer moved at an acceptable speed. She withdrew it more and more often to wet it with saliva. However, the mother still derives immense pleasure from the full picture, punishing the disobedient Sakura through oral. Yes, sadism is in her blood. I wonder, Mabuki thought, if my daughter has inherited my traits. Meanwhile, her daughter tried to satisfy her mother's needs until she interrupted her. "You've atoned for your disobedience well." Mabuki pulled away from her daughter's face. "Let your mouth rest." Sakura looked at her mistress in surprise. She looked quite pleased. "Is that all?" "Praise the sage of the 6 paths, I thought this would go on all day." "What's next?" "I doubt she'll stop there." "But you remember," the woman continued, adjusting her blonde hair, "what day is it today?" "Today is family day, so I will give you my love." With these words, Mabuki laid her daughter on the bed. With a jerk, she pulled off her shorts, exposing the bottom. "Your skin is so soft," her fingers moved down along the strong abdominal muscles. She reached her pubis, ran her hand over the soft pink fuzz, went down to her, and then removed her hand. I see you're still wet, so I won't delay. She knelt down. She had a wonderful view of her daughters. The neat outer labia held the inner ones tightly, preventing them from sagging. The elder Haruno smiled. Even here, you're your true self, the thought flashed through her mind. She'd always known that, despite her apparent simplicity and naivety, Sakura hid her true self within. You're just like her mother. The kunoichi was at a loss as to what to do. Should she remain passive or take advantage of the situation? Should she patiently wait for it to end, or, on the contrary, take an active part? Sakura chose the latter. She propped herself up on her hands and spread her legs wider, a gesture urging her mother to action. Mabuki appreciated her initiative. She grabbed her daughter by the hips and abruptly pressed herself against her, as if she were not a woman, but a young man finally allowed into a woman's company. The younger Haruno nearly fell backwards from such abruptness. The woman greedily, as if she'd long wanted to taste her daughters. The housewife roughly, her vulva. The forceful movements of her tongue were having a profound effect on the tender flesh. Sakura couldn't tell if she was, from pleasure or pain. It was entirely possible that both were true. The girl squealed, like a vampire. The woman was biting into the sensitive nub. At the same time, she felt something touch her. Her mother was pressing her finger against her sphincter. Don't, the medicnine cried out, holding back tears from the rough caresses. Her request fell on deaf ears. Surprisingly, her mother was being gentle. Using her natural lubrication, she massaged the hole, preparing it for entry. Sakura concentrated her thoughts on the actions of her tongue. She really didn't like the idea of. Fortunately, the pleasure overcame her disgust. Meanwhile, the finger noticeably relaxed the muscle and, as far as a nail. Mabuki worked professionally, if you can call it that, expanding centimeter by centimeter. The narrow opening yielded easily thanks to her thorough approach. Soon, half a finger was hidden inside. Your ass is so tight, you've never used it before, the mother smiled, revealing her daughter's secret. No, I don't think that's right. Sakura was embarrassed and confused, as her mother's word sounded like a reproach. So today we'll be working with it actively, she said, taking a cone-shaped object from her bag. The girl took a closer look. It was a butt plug. She's going to insert this into me. The younger Haruno was terrified of how it would fit. Her mother noticed the fear on her daughter's face and explained, don't worry, it only seems too big. In fact, I came to give it to you today so you'll be well prepared for tonight. The explanation didn't inspire hope in the kunoichi. She covered her backside with her hand, not intending to insert anything into herself. Anger flashed across the woman's face. Naughty girl, you can't get out of this, so better yet, don't resist. The mother removed her daughter's hand, especially since your hole is already ready. Mabuki, 2 fingers and continued to work her. The latter tried to show with her whole appearance that she didn't like it. However, the medicnine's whims had the opposite effect. They made the woman continue even more diligently. Sakura breathed heavily, restraining herself from resisting. If she dared to resist again, it would only make things worse. Desperately, her gaze was directed at the door. She didn't want to look at the sadistic smile and burning eyes of her tormentor, much less at the fingers, and the door. The door gave her hope that she would soon get out of here. Something stirred inside. Not physically, but spiritually. A mixture of disgust, rage, and despair awakened a part of her that she'd been hiding as deep in her subconscious as possible. Like a bolt from the blue, inner Sakura's curses echoed in her head. Damn woman. You're a wimp. The second personality was clearly dissatisfied with the state of affairs. She was unleashing her pent-up aggression on everyone. The kunoichi, willy-nilly, had to concentrate. She'd successfully suppressed her dark side before, and she should be able to do the same now. However, with every movement of Mabuki's hand inside her, with every thrust, the alter ego grew more insistent. Her inner world felt more like a storm, only growing stronger. Until she felt her but overflowing. What? The medic Neen returned to reality. Curious, she reached between her legs and felt the faceted surface of glass. Mabuki laughed, standing to the side. You were so lost in yourself that you didn't even notice when I inserted the plug. Her daughter looked at her. She was already getting ready to leave. I'm expecting you home today. If you don't come or don't have the plug, you'll be in serious trouble. With these words, Mabuki left the room. And Sakura continued to sit on the bed, thinking about what was happening. Even in the middle of the day, the bar was packed. The great Sannin, also a writer, was presenting a new book. All the fans in Konoha had come to buy an autographed copy. Jiraiya sat on a sofa, a glass of sake in hand. The informal atmosphere perfectly suited the tone of his books. Fresh copies lay on the table in front of him. The line of fans was so long that it couldn't fit in the spacious bar. Several young kunoichi flanked the celebrity. Busty blondes, brunettes, and brown-haired women, all were delighted by the old man's attention and laughed at every joke, vying with each other for the right to refill his glass. Hush, hush, beauties, the Sannin reassured them. Each of you can help me. The sake he'd drunk had its consequences. His bladder was overflowing and suddenly began to feel full. Please forgive me, he addressed those present, but I need to pause the proceedings for a moment. I'll be back soon, please wait. The crowd cheered him on, and the old man confidently headed for the nearest restroom. The toilet brought him some peace. Amid the hegemony of fan sounds, he remembered why he had become a hermit. Thankfully, the girls had brightened his awkward situation and given him hope for a fun time after the autograph session. Jiraiya recalled a monk saying, "The soul is not in the heart, but under the bladder," because after going to the toilet, the soul feels better, and now he completely agreed with it. The Sannin finished his chores and was heading for the exit, until a suspicious rustling alerted him. The man scanned the room, everything was in its place. Something flashed in his peripheral vision. He was about to make his seals, when he realized it was just a piece of paper caught in the wind. Suddenly, the piece of paper rushed towards him. The toad sage tried to fight it off, but it stuck tightly to his skin. A whole cloud of paper flew in through the window and pounced on the writer. The alcohol prevented him from reacting to such an attack, and the Sannin was instantly covered in paper, turning him into something resembling a mummy. The cocoon landed silently on the floor. Then it carefully rose into the air and flew out into the street. Jiraiya opened his eyes. Judging by the sensations, he was lying on a bed. The man stood up and looked around. It was a half-empty apartment. Probably a rented one, the owner certainly wouldn't neglect his house like that. Besides, it's probably on the outskirts. Who brought me here? Hey, kidnapper. Come out. We will fight openly. The door behind him opened. I came here not as an enemy, but as your daughter, a cold female voice rang out from behind. The Sannin saw a tall, blue-haired girl emerge from the shower. Water trickled down her beautiful legs, revealing a rather seductive figure through the towel. Her face was emotionless, like metal, like the piercing under her lip. Is that you? Conan, the man couldn't believe his eyes. His former student stood before him, half, and devilishly beautiful. You've grown up, I see. He knew his student was one of Akatsuki's top figures. However, she didn't convey any danger. Jiraiya chuckled good-naturedly at the situation. Yes, it's me. The great ninja looked away. He might have a reputation for being but this girl was his former student, so he should behave respectfully. To smooth things over, he had to ask, and, why are you here? Conan's coldness and calm contrasted with the old man's emotionality. Her eyes, like a pair of amber, looked straight into the hermit's soul. There was not a trace of embarrassment in them. I know what day it is today. You are like a father to me. Many years ago, you gave me light in this dark world and saved orphans, even though you might not have noticed us. So I want to repay your kindness. The word stunned the Sannin. He never thought something like this would happen, and the initiative from a woman surprised him a little. I see. He put his hands behind his head, adopting a carefree pose and looked straight into the eyes of the student. Are you sure about this? Yes, the student's laconicism only made her more attractive. Every woman should have an enigma. Conan was the best embodiment of this expression. Are you going to stand there like this? The man was taken aback, but quickly extricated himself. Please forgive me, let me take a shower. I don't want to be seen like this in front of you. The girl nodded in agreement and let the sensei into the shower room. Under the streams of hot water, Jiraiya diligently scrubbed every inch of his body. A boyish smile never left his face. What luck! Today I was looking for copper, and I found gold. After a while, the toad sage emerged, adjusting his mane of hair. His student sat motionless on the bed, cross-legged, waiting. In this position, she resembled a statue, the hand of the greatest sculptor imaginable. Jiraiya approached and sat down on the bed next to her. He took her hand and kissed it. Looking into her eyes, the man said, "You've grown into a real beauty, Conan." The girl returned his compliment. She approached him and tenderly kissed her teacher, running her hand over his strong chest. The towel could no longer stay, revealing a young body. The man's gaze drank in her rather large, beautiful, and did not move even after he was pushed onto the bed. I adore confident women, the hermit thought, kissing his lover. Despite the coldness, her kisses were very hot. Conan moved toward her teacher and pulled away from his lips. She revealed herself in all her glory and even smiled. Slightly, watching the famous, greedily gaze at her perfect, milky female body. She also felt a decent-sized organ strain beneath the layer of fabric. The toad sage was proud that at his age, was still as strong. If you want to know the color of a woman's, look at her lips. Jiraiya had understood this long ago, and now he confirmed his thesis again. The criminal's lips were as scarlet as the mounds on her firm curves. The orphan crawled back a little. She removed the towel from the Sannin's hips and leaned toward his. Her head rose and fell rhythmically, taking almost the entire length of him. Wow, the hermit managed to squeeze out, where did you learn that? Conan said nothing, only looking into his eyes, not taking her eyes off his. Yes, such a woman is probably unique in the entire world. The harsh conditions of her native land have tempered her appearance and character, as do the most skilled blacksmiths. Jiraiya plunged his hand into the beautiful blue. Using pressure, he helped his student, forcing her to linger for a while until his was completely hidden in her mouth. The girl did not object and completely complied with her mentor's wishes. The criminal released his, and leaned toward its base. A gentle kiss on the leather sack concealing her adopted father's. At the same time, she, with her hand to keep his, from falling off. The hermit was ready to squeal with pleasure. He hadn't met such an experienced passion in a long time. And the sight of his student diligently, and kissing his balls, not forgetting his erection, he promised himself he'd remember for the rest of his life. They truly say a woman can take a man to the gates of heaven. Conan pulled away, wiped away her drool, and adjusted her hair. She crawled over until her was directly above his. Do you really want to ride him right now? The man asked excitedly. Meanwhile, she leaned over and supported herself with her hands on the bed. The girl deceived his expectations by beginning to rub her labia against his. Her, gently bouncing with every pelvic thrust, appeared before Jiraiya's face. The notorious, went on the offensive again. He grabbed her, in his hands and dug into them. Conan let out a soft. The Sannin decided to forget that she was his student. In any case, she knew of his notoriety and what she was getting into, so what was the point of holding back? His lips wrapped around a firm, tugging it before releasing it. Then he, on the nub. The girl, again. Pleasure sent the blood rushing to his head. Jiraiya was about to abruptly, his adopted daughter and take her, as she understood. The criminal rose up and, guiding his, with her hand, sat down on it. The made her bite her lip to keep from, and the Sannin fell back onto the pillow. What happened next left an impression on him for the rest of his life. Conan's hips moved smoothly and rhythmically from side to side. As if to an inaudible music, she performed an dance on his member. The hermit watched, mesmerized, as his lover's pelvis became like a graceful pendulum. Without stopping, the girl began the same rhythmic and smooth rises. The sensation was indescribable as he almost pulled out of her, and then immediately slid in all the way. Her upper body didn't lag behind. The student used her hands to display her, in all their glory, and nibbled her lower lip. Sometimes her arms would rise up, like snakes, and her elastic forms would bounce in time with her hips. The grace and elegance of her movements mesmerized the man, leaving an unforgettable impression. "You truly are a demoness," the teacher declared admiringly, escalating to a. Without stopping, Conan moved her hands to the Sannin's chest. Using them as support, she continued to move her pelvis up and down at the same pace, impaling herself on the phallus. Damn, how did she manage to completely, me? Jiraiya decided to keep up. His hands firmly gripped the temptress's hips, and his pelvis began to thrust in time with her partner's movements. The girl's pale skin began to flush, indicating the high level of arousal that had overwhelmed her. The kunoichi leaned back and continued, demonstrating that endurance was one of her strengths. She urged the teacher on, displaying in all its glory what was going on between her legs. The criminal's composure was also admirable. Despite experiencing no less pleasure, she didn't show it on her face. The Sannin couldn't resist. In a fit of passion, he rose and stood over the girl, throwing her long legs over his shoulders. This position allowed for deep. Therefore, was able to, her body to the limit, pressing against her cervix. Her beautiful face was so close. The toad sage couldn't resist kissing her with his tongue. "It appears you are still in the prime of your life, master," the compliment sounded especially pleasant coming from her lips. Surprisingly, her voice was still calm. Jiraiya perceived such restraint as a challenge to his skills. He could repeatedly make any girl erupt in, but today's lover was a worthy opponent. "Well then, I'll test you to the fullest extent of my abilities." The foster father rolled the orphan onto his stomach. He thrust sharply, his thrusts becoming as fast and rough as possible. Mercilessly, he pounded her soft body into the bed with his pelvis. His hands reached underneath her and grabbed her. Even this failed to dampen Conan's ardor, and she began to woo the. "How do you like that?" he said, leading the kunoichi. She got into a knee and elbow position and once again felt the full force, power, and speed of her mentor. Her with a loud slurp. Jiraiya simultaneously admired her beautiful backside and delivered loud slaps. "You're magnificent, I can hardly handle you," the hermit looked down. Her labia and opening were noticeably swollen, showing how aroused she was. "Yes. Your stamina and endurance are impressive. I'm having a hard time holding back. I'll be soon." Conan abruptly seized the initiative, pulling away from the. She turned around. With a push, she sent the Sannin back onto the pillows and pressed her mouth to his. The girl, passionately and quickly, helping him come closer with her hand. A moment before, following her intuition, the criminal swallowed the phallus as deeply as she could and took the entire stream of hot liquid into her throat. The eruption was accompanied by a loud groan from the hermit, showing how much he enjoyed it. In a moment of clarity, Jiraiya remembered today's event. "Damn it, I'm presenting books today." "To hell with them," Conan said, pressing herself against her mentor's strong chest. The forest air, rich with a variety of scents, had a pleasant effect on every member of the Inuzuka clan. Of all the clans, they are the most wild, though their connection to living creatures is noticeably inferior to the Aburame clan. They spend every day strolling through the forests around the village, not allowing their heightened senses to be weakened by city life. Today was no ordinary stroll. A full-fledged training session, though more like a simulated combat mission, included pursuing a simulated enemy for dozens of kilometers, detecting enemy saboteurs, and sparring. In short, today the Inuzuka did everything they usually do in war. Kiba was without his four-legged friend today. All the dogs were undergoing the necessary checkups at the clan's medical center. Despite this, he, Hana, and Sun decided to stick to their established routine, since war, too, doesn't look for an opportunity. The boy swiftly covered kilometer after kilometer through the trees. His mission was to locate the enemy scout, his mother, Sum. He stopped periodically and sniffed the air to keep track. However, today he was completely out of sorts. A strange excitement had haunted him since the morning, as if his instincts were more powerful than usual. There. The scent was stronger here. Kiba sniffed, determining the direction his mother was moving. His ears also perked up, knowing the enemy might be nearby. Cautiously, from tree to tree, he searched for his target. There she was. Crouched at the roots of a tree on all fours. She had assumed the pose of a predator, as every Inuzuka becomes in the wild. Suddenly, that same excitement overcame him again. His gaze fell on the woman's backside. He watched, mesmerized, the alluring curves beneath the fabric. But he couldn't be distracted from the mission, even if it was a training one. Kiba leaped down on top of his target. He did everything silently, and the mother realized she was immobilized only for an instant, before she had time to do anything. The woman tried to break free, but the grip was tight. Well done, she praised her son, you did everything right. You weren't easy to track. Inuzuka sniffed. A sweet scent hung in the air. The boy felt arousal building inside him. This. The ninja realized what scent had taken hold of him now, female pheromones. Kiba, you can let me go. The task is complete. It was uneasy for the woman to be pinned to the ground with her hands behind her back. He tried to pull away, but couldn't. Instincts forced him to hold on to his prey even tighter. His breathing became labored, like that of a beast. What are you doing? Sum tried to break free again. Forgive me, but I can't contain my inner beast. Kiba released his hands and, with a few slashes, tore the clothes off his mother's back. The woman, shocked, didn't even try to pull them away. Ninja vests are durable armor, and her son had effortlessly dealt with it. This is what happens when an Inuzuka gives in to their animal side. Sum felt her wolf within respond to the call. She knew full well that the entire clan was particularly susceptible to the influence of instincts today. So they had to take all the Inuzuka outside the village, under the pretext of training. Who knows what they would have done in the city? The boy finished fiddling with the clothes. He looked at his handiwork. A practically, woman lay before him, surrounded by torn fabric. His hands lifted his mother by the hips, urging her to assume a suitable position. A sudden kick sent Kiba flying into the nearest tree. Before his eyes, the kunoichi instantly rose and disappeared among the trees. We need to get him away from this place. There are other clan members nearby, I don't want them interfering. Sum tore off the remaining gear that was in the way as she ran. She raced through the trees with the speed of a beast, leading her son deeper into the forest. She knew perfectly well that he had most likely recovered from the blow and had already begun pursuing her. Not bad mating games, she thought, when suddenly she saw movement out of the corner of her eye. So fast. The boy, with inhuman zeal, caught up with the woman and jumped on her, knocking her to the ground again. Let go, there might be brothers nearby. Let's get further away. Sum shouted at her pursuer, but he didn't hear her. The adrenaline and excitement of the chase were doing their job, allowing desires to override reason. Without waiting for coercion, the mother assumed the required position, on all fours. Kiba immediately positioned himself behind her. Without any foreplay, her womb. The Inuzuka was behaving roughly. This wasn't a meeting between two lovers, but between a male and a female. Sum steadfastly endured her son's furious onslaught. She'd assumed it would be routine, she'd patiently satisfy the puppy's urges and then it would be over. However, today, instincts overwhelm everyone, and a kunoichi is no exception. Despite suppression, natural desires began to erupt. The skin of her thighs flushed from the firm grip. Hard, rapid thrusts forced her to arch, allowing them to more easily and cause less friction. The slapping of their bodies diluted the sounds of the forest. Not far from where her mother had initially hidden, Hannah had positioned herself. Her outfit was rather loose, consisting of short shorts that hugged her hips and a standard vest, which she always unbuttoned, creating a cleavage so as not to press on her. She sniffed like a wolf. My brother was here recently, she said, voicing the information gleaned from her sense, and my mother. Another scent appeared. The girl smiled. She knew perfectly well what it meant, so you've already found her. The kunoichi followed the scent. The sound of slaps reached her heightened hearing. So as not to scare the couple, she crept up carefully. Her eyes met a scene very similar to the one that occurs during mating. The mother was on all fours, her back arched obsequiously, and the younger brother was positioned behind. Soon she was noticed. Hana. What are you doing here? Some growled, guarding her territory like an animal. The girl admired the way her mother's large, swayed in rhythm with the male's movements. What do you mean? I came to join the mating. I wanted to find my brother earlier, but he ran into you. Don't you dare. This is our moment and ours alone. The intense jealousy inherent in their clan manifested itself. For convenience, the medic Neen removed her vest, revealing only a pair of tight shorts and a. She unzipped her belt pouch and pulled out a pink, oblong object with straps, a phallus. The mother watched her daughter's actions. She removed her shorts and, quickly donned the strap-on, and strode confidently toward them. What are you planning to do? The woman asked, curbing her son's advances. Brother's unlikely to free your backside, and I'm not going to wait. Hana noted that Kiba was so engrossed in mating that he hadn't even noticed his sister's arrival. However, she doubted there was anything rational in him right now. Nevertheless, she pointed the artificial, straight at her mother's face. The woman was completely unwilling to take this imitator into her mouth. She clenched her teeth and growled, showing her displeasure. However, each thrust from her son broke her concentration, forcing her to weaken her resistance. The younger Inuzuka took advantage of this and inserted the phallus. The veterinary kunoichi didn't hold back. Her movements matched her brother's. They simultaneously entered the woman, they're obedient. Unlike her mother. Hana didn't suppress herself at all and the protrusion on the phallus stimulated her, perfectly, bringing immense pleasure. Tsum Inuzuka, the formidable kunoichi of the hidden leaf, is now nothing more than a, in our hands, the girl commented, completely satisfied with this state of affairs. Smells. There were a lot of smells around, sweat, feminine lubrication, trees, animals. Tsum could hardly do anything but passively perceive the world around her. She was assigned the role of a female. Her son was positioned behind her, tirelessly groping her. Her daughter was already in her mouth in front, trying to keep up with her brother's pace. Hana felt a shroud of pleasure envelop her. The tip of the phallus stimulated her sensitive nub with each thrust. Trying to increase the flow of sensation, she thrust faster and harder. However, a thirst was burning inside. A thirst for something more. More than just friction against her. The girl looked at the obedient female between her and her brother. She was definitely getting all the pleasure. This won't do. I want it too. The medic Neen stopped and pulled the strap-on from the woman's mouth. She came to her senses and looked at the girl in surprise, apparently expecting an explanation for such a drastic action. You're not the only one in the spotlight right now, Hana smiled playfully, looking at her mother. The kunoichi came up to Tsum's side. She climbed on top of the woman and pressed herself against her back. With her hand, she guided the tip of the phallus and buried it in her mother's sphincter. What are you doing, Hana? The woman protested. The girl ignored the indignation and gracefully turned to look at Kiba. Brother, you're probably tired of mating only with her by now. Don't you want someone younger? She shook her ass, beckoning the boy. Despite being in beast mode, he understood what was being offered and immediately finished with his mother. Kiba pulled out his hard member and inserted it into his sister. A small wave of pleasure ran through the kunoichi's body. How dare you do that, you naughty girl? Tsum growled in anger. Don't worry, mommy, I won't leave you without attention. Hana pressed her pelvis, allowing the dildo to begin to, her ass. The girl felt the full force of what her mother had gone through. Her brother's furious onslaught knocked the breath out of her, causing her to shudder with pleasure and rough action. She unabashedly, and squealed. How did she endure it, so obediently motionless? Ouch! 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 The older Inuzuka screamed desperately. The kunoichi understood the reason for the woman beneath her screams. With each thrust of her brother, Hana's strap-on, her mother's ass deeper. The girl smiled, realizing the whole situation. Pull it out of me. I told you I wouldn't leave you without attention, her daughter laughed. The older Inuzuka tried to break free, but they wouldn't let her. The girl's hands pressed down and forced her to the ground, just as her son had pushed her down a little earlier when he found her. She was catching her breath. The phallus seemed larger than her, and could tear her apart. But that didn't happen. Relentlessly, it, further. Some felt deprived. This little devil had first, interfered in their process, and then completely took her son's member for herself. As a consolation, she was given a strap-on, which her daughter used to, her. And they pinned her to the ground to prevent her from escaping. What an injustice. Meanwhile, Hana was enjoying the fruits of her role. Her insatiable brother was leaving not a single untouched spot on her. How good it was that this stud had ended up with her. At the same time, it was pleasant to, his own mother, renowned for her formidable temper. The boy's hands suddenly and firmly gripped his sister's hips. Hana cried out in surprise. He gave the strongest thrust, pushing his, as deep as possible, and came. Oh yes, the kunoichi said, pressing lightly against the woman's back. Sum was already expecting her daughter to leave her alone and go about her business, when the friction resumed. Did you really think I'd leave you? Exhausted, Kiba fell backward onto the ground. His head was spinning, and every muscle in his body ached, as if he'd run 100 kilometers at once. The boy didn't remember what had happened, he grabbed his mother, and then everything was a blur. He rose with trembling arms, and an unusual sight met his eyes. 2 female bodies, his sister and mother. Hana was wearing a phallus with straps, which she used to, the woman's ass. Sum squealed every time the girl moved her pelvis forward. What's going on? Inuzuka asked, confused. Hana turned around and replied joyfully, Oh, are you awake, little brother? She didn't exactly stop, but rather continued to pound her mother's, even harder. You were a model dog, weren't you, mommy? Kiba still hadn't come to his senses. However, when he saw, dripping from the kunoichis, he immediately understood what had happened. Oh, sage of the 6 paths, the boy cried out angrily and fell back to the ground. The steam from the hot spring pleasantly warmed Hinata's nearly, body. The only thing she was wearing was a bath towel. An observer would have thought it magical, as it somehow contained her ample. She removed her hair clip and shook her head, letting her hair fall free. The door slid silently open behind her. Hinata heard the rapid patter of feet before a push from behind sent her flying into the water. Resurfacing, she heard ringing laughter. Hey, little sister, Hanabi said, holding her stomach to keep from bursting into laughter. You shouldn't have stood so close to the water. The young woman was as beautiful as the clan's heiress. She had the same slender body, decent, though slightly smaller, and soft skin that bespoke the object of all her compatriots' affections. Their main difference was their character. And the woman showed it. The elder Hyuga lost her temper and, using a soft blow, sent a whole wave at her sister. Because of you, my hair got wet. And the towel is also wet. Don't be angry, said the younger sister, wiping the water from her face. Are you too old for fun? Well, you can use my towel. Hinata really felt how the burden of responsibility for the clan gradually made her too serious. Previously, she also constantly played around with her relative. However, the princess could not refuse a dose of advice, you should be more serious. Representatives of our powerful and proud clan must behave appropriately. We especially need to show off in front of Niji. I'm sure he doesn't particularly like such carefree girls. The girl snorted in response and demonstratively turned away. I don't like it when you start talking about your brother. Hanabi was extremely serious, not a trace of childish carelessness remained. I will never forgive him for what he did. Of course, she was talking about that very day when Niji dealt with her rather harshly during the exam. Everyone remembers that terrible act of their brother. However, much water has flowed under the bridge since then. The Hyuga from the house himself realized the gravity of his actions and changed for the better. Hinata smiled. Her sister was angrier than she was about her brother's behavior that day. Hinata swam over and hugged her sister. This action had an effect, and the little sister returned to her usual course, hugging back and burying her face in the lush of the Hyuga clan heiress. I really like your Heine, I want those too. So unfair. Hanabi playfully attacked the kunoichi. Why? Yours are only slightly inferior to mine. Hinata tried to free herself from the grip, but to no avail, her little sister had grabbed her tightly. The baths filled with feminine laughter. The sisters were having a good time, discussing boys, future events, and everyday life. Brothers late, Hanabi remarked, splashing water. Hinata dodged the splashes and sank into the water up to her neck. He's supposed to be back from a mission today, so he's probably late. The girl was lost in thought, oblivious to Hanabi's gaze. The younger sister was eyeing her with interest, trying to see what the water was hiding. We can start without brother, right? It's a family holiday, so we might as well express our love for each other to pass the time. The Byakugan princess looked at her. Her sister's face was red, but was it from the steam? She immediately replied, of course, why not? Great. A joyful Hanabi quickly swam up to her friend. Despite her younger status and age, the kunoichi happily, her future head. Their lips touched, and Hinata was pressed against the wall of the spring. Their tongues intertwined. The Hyugas entwined in an embrace. Passion, fueled by the heat of the water, inflamed them and made them forget everything around them. The younger sister acted confidently. She grabbed Hinata's hips and pulled her up, forcing her to wrap her legs around her lover. She held her sister like a man. The Byakugan princess, feeling her relative act this way towards her. Hanabi didn't stop there and squeezed her buttocks hard, digging her fingers into the soft skin. I bet no man could act that boldly with you. Hinata said nothing, accepting all the kisses on her neck and beautiful face. She didn't forget to kiss back. True, she was far from her sister's tenacity. What are you doing? The older sister asked when she felt fingers touching her between her legs. Did you think we'd limit ourselves to just kissing? Her sister smiled. Okay, but be gentle, she winked. The woman's hands gently stroked the heiress's thighs. They moved from her sides to her buttocks, making circular motions and ending between the two circles. Then they descended to her legs and, caressing the inner part, the most sensitive, rose higher, to the secret place. Hinata. Escaped her not so much from the pleasant touches, but from the fact that her sister was stimulating her chakra points. Girls of the Hyuga clan have an advantage over others when it comes to giving pleasure. Chakra flows control all processes in the body, including sensations. By stroking or pressing certain chakra points, one can both redirect pleasure and change its concentration. Yes, the Hyuga girls can rightfully be called true succubi. Ah, the princess, in surprise as Hanabi ran her fingers over her labia. Her fingertips stopped at the base of her perineum. They quickly found the desired sensitive spot. The younger sister gently and carefully stimulated the bud. Pleasure drove Hinata's legs tighter around her temptress. Encouraged by her victory, the younger sister began to act more roughly. Her movements quickened, and the older one cried out, I told you to be gentle. Be careful. But that didn't stop her sister. She continued until Hinata, writhing, pushed her away. Sorry, I didn't mean to. I understand perfectly well, I shouldn't have gotten carried away. The sisters reconciled and merged in an embrace again. While the younger Hyuga hugged her sister, an idea occurred to her. Would you like my tongue instead of fingers? Hanabi asked. Why not? The kunoichi smiled. The sisters climbed out of the hot spring onto the mat that covered the entire floor. Hinata immediately assumed a seductive pose, sitting on the floor and spreading her legs. The younger sister accepted the invitation. She crawled over and buried her face between her legs. Steamed skin was more sensitive than usual, so the older sister, at the first movements of her tongue and ran her hand through her sister's hair. Remembering her past mistakes, the girl, carefully. Her tongue followed the chakra pathways precisely, allowing her to deliver more pleasure. Her sister's sweet, were noticeably arousing. She felt her fingers tightening around her hair as another wave of pleasure surged. "You're so skilled with your tongue," Hinata commented on her sister's skills. To confirm the authenticity of her words, Hanabi went further. She spread the girls, with her fingers and, it with her tongue. Her taste buds immediately caught the salty tang of pre. Her vigorous movements and the roughness of her tongue did their job, pleasantly stimulating the walls of her. In a fit of excitement, Hinata pressed her sister's head to her. Blood rushed to the elder Hyuga's head. If the younger sister had looked up, she would have seen the flame of passion ignite in the heiress's eyes. Her expression instantly changed from a mask of calm to that of a mistress. "You're trying very hard for the clan head," she said, her lips lightly. Her hand didn't loosen its grip, striving to press her sister deeper into her. Hanabi appreciated the changes in her mistress and became more active. She tried to, her tongue as far as possible, even adjusting the position of her head for comfort. To intensify the sensations, Hinata moved her pelvis. The pleasure of moving her tongue inside her was so satisfying that she promised herself to remember and repeat it in the future. Her sister was trying, it was palpable, and the kunoichi gave in to the flow of pleasure. Had anyone been there, they would have seen an extremely tempting picture. A beautiful girl, legs spread, pressed her equally beautiful friend to her, and vigorously moved her lower body, allowing her to, deeper. The younger Hyuga, despite being immersed in a state of arousal, carefully kept track of the time. Niji was due in a few hours, and she wanted to mess around with her sister some more and try out a variety of techniques. She pulled away from her sisters. "I've got an idea." Hanabi was so inspired by the thought that she instantly jumped up and disappeared into the locker room. Her sister didn't even have time to ask why she'd stopped so abruptly. Not a trace remained of the mistress's former mask. Soon the girl returned, carrying a shoulder bag with unknown contents. "Look what I brought," the kunoichi said, dumping the contents of the bag onto the floor. Hinata blushed deeply as what spilled out was a multitude of phalluses of various shapes and sizes. Does her sister really use all of this? "So, how do you like my collection?" "Wow. It's impressive." The younger one giggled at the well-chosen comment. She had been collecting for quite a while, so it was high time she tried them out on her sister. "Which one do you want me to try on you?" At such a question, Hinata, like any modest girl according to her status, blushed even more and covered her mouth with her hand. "Oh. I don't even know." "Okay, I'll choose for myself." She chose a medium-sized pink phallus. "Perfect for warming up." Hanabi approached her sister. The latter froze with uncertainty, not knowing what to do. Without wasting any time, she inserted one end of the into herself. "I'm still playing the role of a guy, aren't I?" Giggled the mischievous girl, looking at her modest sister, "So we'll have a lot of fun." The younger Hyuga hovered over the future head of the clan. She lowered herself and pressed the tip of the dildo against Hinata's labia. Wasn't even necessary, her, already warmed up by the previous caresses, was generously lubricated with natural. The girl pressed her pelvis, and the dildo easily slid inside. "Ugh," the Byakugan princess uttered from such easy. "I chose the size so well. So let's get started." A slight push was enough to insert almost completely. Both girls, simultaneously. Hanabi hadn't expected the double-ended dildo to her so deeply. But there was no time for respite, she needed to prove herself to her beloved sister. The kunoichi's hips began to move. She moved smoothly, not wanting to be stopped by the rush of pleasure. Hinata, on the other hand, obediently accepted it, although it was clear she wanted to pull away at times, but she restrained herself. The younger girl tried not to take her eyes off her sister's face. The latter threw her head back and squeezed her eyes shut in pleasure. As the intensity of her movements increased, her mouth opened in sync, releasing soft. Suddenly, the heiress took the initiative. Hanabi felt a strange pressure. Control of the situation was gradually slipping from her. She watched as her sister began thrusting. Lightly at first, but gradually increasing the pace, she overtook her lover and the kunoichi tried to regain her former advantage. However, because she couldn't determine her own pleasure threshold, everything went awry. She could only meekly cede her place as the victor in this unspoken competition. Hinata was pleased with her role. Her face instinctively smiled, a symbol of her inner state. Despite slight tremors from the pleasurable sensations, she kept the pace high and vigorously moved her hips, allowing the phallus to, not only her but also her partners. When it happened, the Byakugan princess felt her labia brush against her sister's. "Not bad," she commented. The rubber, inside her, coupled with the friction of their genitals, took things to a whole new level. Mingled into a chorus of tender, sensual voices. The hyugas moved in sync, simultaneously moving away and drawing closer. Naturally, they didn't forget to rub against each other. It didn't take long for the pleasure to peak. Feelings exploded like a million sparks inside each of them. The sound of their backs slapping twice against the mat echoed. It was time to catch their breath. It took only a moment to regain their strength. The girls rose. In unison. Each knew what their sister wanted. They seamlessly embraced. Their kisses covered their necks, collarbones, and Hanabi, out of habit, took the lead. She held her sister confidently in her arms, her palms moving lower. Soon, her fingers closed around her sizable buttocks. She gently kneaded them, relishing the soft flesh. The kunoichi, softly from the pleasurable manipulations and imagined herself in her lover's arms. The thought immediately inflamed her rested body. The younger Hyuga buried her face between her sisters. She was willing to bet that almost every guy from Hinata's senior year would have given anything to be in her place. Even if the context were removed, the extremely pleasant sensations of warmth and comfort remained. However, the girl was still aroused. She was eager to try out everything she had brought on her sister. She let go of her sister and walked over to the scattered toys. "How about we test this?" Hanabi picked up one object. It was shorter than the others and cone-shaped with a handle. The older Hyuga peered curiously at what her partner was holding. "What is this?" she asked finally. "It's a butt plug." The kunoichi was surprised. She hadn't thought her ass would be involved today. Her hopes were for classic forms of pleasure. "Oh, maybe we shouldn't. I'm not sure it will fit inside me. It only looks big." "Don't worry, I'll take care of everything." "Okay," Hinata gave in. All of her sister's experiments so far had only brought pleasure, so it was unlikely that this would be any worse. The girl got on all fours and spread her legs wide. Hanabi was delighted by her sister's consent and clung to her ass. The essential oils added to the water made her skin smell like sweet fruits. "Stop. What are you doing?" the kunoichi protested. "Sorry, I couldn't help myself, your ass is so beautiful. I can't describe it. But it's always tempted me." Hanabi began oral. She latched onto her, and vigorously massaged it with her tongue. Her strong sphincter made it clear it had never been used. The girl was delighted to have the honor of depriving her sister of her. Admittedly, that hole already required, as it was practically devoid of natural. But this didn't bother the kunoichi, as she had brought a bottle of lubricant with the toys. The lubricant was excellent quality. Not too sticky and not too runny, the mixture landed on the pink surface of the sphincter. The girl's fingers distributed it evenly. When the preparation was complete, Hanabi inserted a finger into the heiress's ass. She tried to restrain her reaction, but this only provoked the girl. The younger Hyuga moved slowly and smoothly, twisting her finger to relax the muscle ring. Hinata's arousal noticeably helped to develop her. Soon, the second finger joined the first. Together, they fit comfortably inside her ass. Periodically, her sister let out a soft ouch when she felt she first needed to get used to the current position to allow deeper. It didn't take long to develop her to an acceptable state. When this happened, Hanabi, satisfied with her work, gave her sister a hard slap on the buttock. "Ow," the older Hyuga responded. "Be careful, you'll leave a mark." "Never mind, let's not think about the consequences." Hinata wondered what Niji would think when he learned of their antics before he arrived. Would he be angry? Or would he be offended because they'd started without him? Or would he accept it calmly and be happy for his sisters, who were having a wonderful time? While the older sister was lost in thought, the girl picked up the butt plug from the floor and squeezed some lubricant onto it. With light movements of her hand, she covered the entire surface and turned to face her partner. She meekly awaited the next step. Hanabi sank before one of the most beautiful sights she'd ever seen. Her sister, with wide hips, large buttocks, and neat holes, stood before her, legs spread. She added a little more lubricant to her, and began the main part. Ugh! Hinata gritted her teeth as the butt plug began to enter her. The heiress of the clan felt the cone-shaped object slowly but surely move inside her. Her tight little ass stubbornly refused to cooperate with this outrage against the princess's body and resisted as best she could. However, the lubricant paid off, aiding the "Easy, little sister, relax," the younger Hyuga reassured her and continued inserting the object. Hinata felt cheated. The plug didn't seem any smaller, on the contrary, it was growing larger than it looked. Perhaps this was because the girl had never really worked on her ass. Nevertheless, it was difficult to accommodate such a large object. However, she needed to prove herself worthy of the future clan head, so she endured as best she could and tried not to make any sounds that signaled weakness. Meanwhile, Hanabi continued inserting the plug. This image aroused her so much that her free hand immediately moved down and began caressing her. The heat of arousal consumed her, and she allowed herself to be somewhat rough with her, knowing her sister would endure it all and remain silent. Soon, the object was fully inserted. The stone-encrusted handle remained outside. Now it was time to leave it there for a while, so her body could adjust. The girl returned to the scattered objects and this time picked up the imitation, with straps. Hearing the sound of straps being tied, Hinata turned around. She remained motionless due to the discomfort with the plug, but she was able to see her sister put on the strap-on and check its fit. Hanabi returned to her partner and positioned herself behind her. The kunoichi spanked her again and inserted the phallus into the girl's. She began vigorously moving her pelvis. The princess. The younger sister's fingers dug into her hips, using them as support for rapid thrusts. The younger Hyuga was shamelessly, her sister. Every now and then, she glanced at the ass in front of her and the handle of the butt plug sticking out of it. Without breaking her pace, she carefully grabbed the protrusion and pulled it towards herself. The heiress had to make a great effort not to scream in surprise. But her body betrayed her when her arms gave way and the girl fell on the floor on her front. She felt her sister's strong thrusts and could hardly withstand them, so she lay helplessly and enjoyed herself. However, are not a sign of weakness and should not be restrained. Are you imagining someone? Hanabi asked unexpectedly and shamelessly, continuing to impale her sister on his. No, absolutely not, Hinata tried to speak confidently, although she broke off into. Or maybe you are imagining that blonde hooligan after all. What? No. Something tells me you're lying. I saw the way you looked at him. Come on, confess. The heiress tried to talk her way out of it, but her partner's quickening pace made it impossible. With her thrusts, the younger Hyuga was beating the truth out of the princess, as if she were being interrogated by a police officer. The Byakugan princess was completely unprepared for this turn of events. Naturally, she liked the guy, but she wasn't going to reveal this secret to anyone. And here, based on her observations, her younger sister was trying to find out. The clan's heiress was having a hard time. On one hand, the pleasure of, completely suppressed her ability to resist by relaxing, and on the other, she was being relentlessly interrogated and forced to reveal the secret. Come on. Confess, the girl delivered a loud and powerful slap. Yes. You're right. I can imagine him. Hinata broke under her sister's pressure. I knew it. Hanabi laughed at what she heard. I wonder what father would say to that. Don't worry, I won't turn you in. The revealed secret gave the younger sister strength. She continued to, her partner with redoubled tenacity. She didn't react or show any sign of being found out. However, they didn't care, as a shroud of passion had consumed her mind. But inside the princess, a storm of feelings and emotions raged. A mixture of resentment, a thirst for revenge, arousal, and a desire for justice gradually eroded the girl's modesty and reserve. Her inner wall gave way and released them, allowing the true Hinata to be unfettered and have her way. The clan heiress jumped off the rubber. She instantly turned around and pushed her sister to the floor. Her gaze filled with contempt, and her lips spread into a sly smile. The girl had become what her status dictated. Hanabi was taken aback by such actions. She didn't recognize her sister. Instead of a modest or calm person, a true mistress sat in her place. The girl knew that in a fit of excitement, people could change dramatically, releasing their true selves, but she couldn't have imagined that her sister's true self was like this. Hinata, I don't recognize you. What's wrong with that, little sister? Did you think you'd be dominant all day? The kunoichi removed her sister's strap-on. No, I never intended that. Don't lie to me, now it's my time to be in charge. You must be obedient, and that will show your respect to the future head of the clan. The elder Hyuga looked over the many toys scattered nearby. Her gaze darted from one to another, assessing each item. And which of them have you tried on yourself? She asked finally. Only a few, her sister answered in a quiet voice, afraid of angering her. After these words, Hinata climbed on top of her sister, who was lying on the mat. She examined the entire collection again and picked up the largest one with imitation veins. The younger sister's eyes widened in surprise, and she tried to stop what was about to happen. Don't you dare use that on me, she screamed, trying to crawl back, but the imperious mistress didn't allow it. Why not? You were probably planning on using it on me, weren't you? The heiress smiled. No. Not at all. I brought it as a joke, and I've never used it myself. The older sister easily forced her sister to lie still on the floor. She moved toward her partner's head and immediately lowered her, onto her face. Everything happened so quickly that Hanabi didn't have time to think or prevent oral. But there was no other way, so she had to give in. Her tongue left her mouth and got to work. Meanwhile, the Byakugan princess wasted no time. Using the power of her eyes, she found the right spot. With one well-aimed strike of 2 fingers, she hit the spot near the pelvic bones. The pelvic muscles, which the chakra not controlled, immediately relaxed. Don't worry, little sister, if your muscles are relaxed, even such a large size won't hurt you. And what did you say? Ah, I remembered, it only looks big. The younger sister tried to cover her, with her hands, but it didn't take long for the girl to remove the barrier. Hinata spread her partner's legs and lubricated the enormous toy. She herself rose, giving her sister a breath of fresh air, then sat back down, not forgetting to get comfortable. Hanabi felt the large phallus touch her labia. It was sticky and cold, from the lubricant. The enormous imitation of A began to enter. It parted her delicate labia and rushed in. The younger Hyuga felt the enormous rubber rod, her. Indeed, thanks to her relaxed muscles, it found no resistance. The girl experienced a whole mixture of sensations, from the pleasant and complete stimulation of every cell of her, to a feeling of extreme fullness and the thought that no more would fit inside her. The phallus stopped its movement. The clan heiress realized it had reached her cervix, so she decided to leave it there. She traced the contours of the object on her stomach with her finger. And how does it feel with such a device inside you? The elder Hyuga giggled, fidgeting on her face. Her fingers moved lower and found her. Without preamble, they immediately began vigorously massaging the mound. While the younger sister restrained herself from her elder sister, as her status dictated, Hinata's position gave her complete freedom of action. At the same time, Hanabi screamed in surprise and rudeness. Her sister's words reached her ears. I wonder who you're in love with. I think I can guess. Because of the covering her face, the younger sister couldn't answer and only muttered incoherently. Better to remain silent than to lie. The princess continued to rapidly massage the sensitive nub, and with her other hand she grabbed the phallus protruding from her. She began to move it similar to those used in intercourse. It was unlikely that her sister would ever meet someone with such dignity, so let her enjoy this unusual experience. Hinata felt the younger sister's ragged breathing on her, and realized she was doing the right thing. Yes, in terms of personality, they were completely opposites, while the heiress was modest and, on the outside, the sister was the opposite. However, the muscle relaxation would soon wear off, so it was time to remove the toy. The satisfied Kunoichi got off her sister and sat down next to her. Her arousal had made her forget about the plug in her ass. Exhausted, Hanabi moved closer to the future head of state and rested her head on her lap. She felt a gentle hand sink into her hair, stroking it motherly. They remained in this position for some time until Hinata asked, by the way, is Natsu here with you? Yes, the younger sister answered curtly. Even though she was already an adult and didn't need the help of a nanny, the latter still followed her around and cared for her as best she could. So let's help her relax in our company. It's also worth returning some of her favors. Hanabi smiled at these words, anticipating what would happen next. Natsu. Hanabi called. Natsu Hyuga appeared in the doorway. The girl belonged to one of the many families. She always accompanied Hanabi, her ward, everywhere. Yes, the girl, in accordance with her status, was engaged in serving the main of the clan, namely, she was a nanny. Natsu was a beautiful girl of average height and always wore a maid outfit. Despite the fact that she shouldered household responsibilities, she still wore the forehead protector of her native village, slightly hidden by her dark green bob. What would you like, Hanabi-sama? She radiated optimism, always making sure her wards were in a good mood. Would you like to join us? Asked the younger Hyuga. Thank you, but I already took a bath today, Natsu smiled sweetly. Hanabi casually approached the nanny. She was unaware of her sister's plan and calmly awaited orders. Hinata followed her sister's example and also approached the guest. And I know what you definitely didn't do today. The younger Hyuga gently ran her finger along the nanny's cheekbone and smiled mysteriously. Sorry, I don't quite understand you. At the same time, Hinata lightly stroked her distant relative's back. She acted slowly, gradually moving lower and lower. Natsu's eyes fell on the toys scattered on the floor. Her face instantly turned red. Embarrassed, she covered her mouth with her hand and asked in a trembling voice, why did you call me? You know what day it is today, Hanabi winked. The Byakugan princess slipped her hands under the nanny's clothes and touched her small. At the same time, she began kissing the guest's neck. The nanny was taken aback, unsure how to respond to such actions or whether she should resist. Hanabi took advantage of this brief pause and abruptly reached into the kimono, reaching for her. She immediately found her, by touch and pulled them down. The nanny tried to stop her, but the ward intercepted her hand. You're supposed to obey us, so why are you resisting? Natsu remained silent. She remained flushed with embarrassment and completely at a loss. The girls continued to carry out their plan to seduce their relative. Hanabi sank to her knees and buried her face in her captive's. The nanny felt a tongue touch her labia. She again tried to free herself and push her ward away. This was unsuccessful, as Hinata prevented her and held her hands. Finally, the girl confessed, the clan head has forbidden the houses from having relations with the main house. The heiress smiled. She was well aware of this order. Niji was the closest to them, so only he was allowed to have contact with the heiresses, while more distant relatives, to which Natsu belonged, were deprived of this opportunity. Don't worry, we won't say anything, her sisters consoled her. The governess faced a difficult choice. Of course, on this holiday, it is necessary to show love to loved ones, to demonstrate their importance to others. But on the other hand, to disobey the clan head's order. No one would want to do that. However, these girls will lead the clan in the future, so their instructions must be followed no matter what. The girl decided to obey and fulfill their wishes. After all, that is the meaning of her life, isn't it? Oh okay, I agree. Having settled the main issue, Hanabi returned to oral. She gently caressed her nannies, with the tip of her tongue. It was no secret to the girl that her tutor was rather shy, so her embarrassment added a special note to the Hyuga Jr.'s arousal. Meanwhile, Hinata played with her future servants. Although Natsu wasn't particularly shapely, a medium-sized bust had its charms. The Byakugan princess liked the fact that each fit in her hand, making caresses considerably easier. Soon, the tutor shuddered. The reason for this was the of a finger by her charge. She was even more embarrassed, as she was unprepared for such a turn of events. Despite her experience, the girl felt completely helpless in the girl's hands. They understood this, as they had power over her, so they cast aside all barriers and acted with enviable. The sisters exchanged glances. They read each other's thoughts and began to implement the next step of their plan. Hinata placed her hands on her shoulders and gently forced her relative to kneel. She looked at the future head of the family with confusion, as if expecting an explanation. Relax and enjoy, they assured her. The clothes left the governess's shoulders and were placed under her feet. The tatami mats could still be uncomfortable for the skin. The girl's legs were spread apart, and the students lowered themselves to the level of her. Hinata lay on her back to ease her access to her nannies. She wrapped her arms around Natsu's hips for support, raised herself up, and pressed her lips to that intimate spot. The kiss was so heated that the recipient squealed in surprise. The younger sister was chosen by lot to pleasure her teachers. She spread her firm buttocks and buried her face between them. The girls silently appreciated the irony. If before the nanny had figuratively, her, now the nanny was, her literally. The two sisters' activity noticeably relaxed their lover. The tension in her body eased. The pleasure from their actions made Natsu's skin break out in goosebumps. Occasionally, waves of tremors ran through it when one of them intensified their efforts. Then they switched positions. Hinata went to pleasure the, and Hanabi returned to her former teachers. Before disappearing into her, she winked at her. The nanny sensed a significant difference between them. The older one was more sensual, fluid, and, overall, imbued every action with deep meaning. While the younger sister acted more emotionally, relying on the speed and force of her movements. The peculiar captive released one of her internal barriers and finally. The sisters were visibly inspired and perceived this as a victory. Excitement and the desire to knock a more intense reaction out of the girl prompted them to add something else to their arsenal. Natsu felt her first finger, in her. In a different situation, she would have been proud of raising the younger sister to always take the initiative. The older sister decided not to be outdone, so she inserted her finger halfway into her. The girl couldn't believe that her body had become a place for competition. And so it was, the sisters had been competing with each other since childhood, driven by the fact that the title of head sister is passed on to the most worthy, not by seniority. They alternately increased the pace of their, and when they realized they could no longer outdo each other in this regard, they switched to 2 fingers. The poor girl could only, unable to stop the rush, and when 3 fingers were already in play, she almost lost her balance. Please, be careful, she tried to calm them down in a stammering voice. It had no effect. Their perceptions were clouded by lust, so if they stopped, it was only to replace a hand, tired from constant movement. However, they soon decided to try something new with her. The heiress sank onto the tatami, pulling her partner along with her. Meanwhile, Hanabi was preparing herself, inserting the double-ended phallus into herself. Natsu lay with her shoulders resting against Hinata's stomach, her head resting between her impressive. The younger sister finished her preparations and confidently walked toward her nanny. The latter didn't even try to stop her, either because she understood the futility of resistance, or because she wanted it herself. The nanny assumed a suitable position. And placed the tip of the toy against the girl's labia. Just be careful, Natsu warned her quietly. I'll decide how to proceed, Hanabi chuckled. Today, she was able to realize something she'd long dreamed of. Without the slightest hesitation, the girl inserted the imitation, and began passionately thrusting, putting all her strength into each thrust. Meanwhile, Hinata caressed her nannies. She watched as her face transformed with each pelvic movement, filling with arousal. Mutual, satisfied both partners. There, rang out in unison, caressing the heiress's ears, who listened with rapture. Having gotten the hang of it, Hanabi was able to move with more confidence, unlike her recent encounter with her sister, and the cramps no longer gripped her legs. You're so smart, Natsu, the Byakugan princess felt a maternal urge, seeing her helplessness. Her older sister's hands gently caressed her small, which undoubtedly pleased their owner. Her fingers smoothly traced her, which were hardened by arousal. And when she gently squeezed them, a short squeak was heard from her. Mistress. But lust rarely allows one to remain a calm observer. So Hinata volunteered to join in. She gently lowered the nanny to the ground and went to put on the strap-on. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw the younger sister quicken her pace, as if wanting to savor the last moments of sole control over her partner. Hush, hush, little sister, she hastened to reassure the dominant, don't forget to leave some for me too. The older sister quickly made preparations and returned to the sweet couple, the girl who was furiously, the unconscious teacher. She stroked her sister's back, urging her to share. She reluctantly stopped. Let's do it standing up, Hinata suggested. Hanabi appreciated her partner's idea and, holding Natsu, assumed a vertical position. The heiress positioned herself behind him and inserted the strap-on into his. If she hadn't paid attention to it before, she now realized that the nanny's hole was noticeably developed. Natsu, it turns out you like to play with your ass, she remarked, or maybe you let someone enter it. The governess's eyes widened in surprise. This reaction didn't escape the attention of her younger sister, who encouraged her, come on, confess, who's screwing you? Natsu covered her mouth with her hands, so as not to accidentally, in a fit of passion, reveal the name of her lover. She absolutely did not want to share this, as she wanted to keep everything secret. Sidelong glances would make her feel uncomfortable. Nevertheless, her sisters had already seized on the tip of this secret and intended to pull it out completely. If you don't want to confess nicely, Hinata smiled maliciously, then we will furiously screw you until you tell us. The girl remained silent. They took this as agreement and began to carry out their agreement. They began thrusting relentlessly, both pushing themselves to the limit, unconcerned about the nanny's private parts. In any case, they were proficient in medical techniques, so they could treat any after-effects that might arise. For Natsu, the situation took a turn for the worse. The feeling of helplessness intensified manifold. She was held suspended, unable to stop anything her sisters might do. The girl could only stoically endure the furious pounding, keeping her mouth shut with her hands. The latter failed with the next acceleration, and she, loudly. Inspired once again by the Hyuga mistress's reaction, their persistence increased to unimaginable heights. Their actions had the desired effect, and, unable to contain the mounting pleasure, Natsu lowered her hands, passively accepting the entire process. Come on, come on. The sisters egged her on to reveal the secret. It took a few more movements for the explosion of pleasure to manifest itself in the nanny's scream. The completely overwhelmed her. The girls took advantage of this and continued their interrogation. The poor girl couldn't bear it. It's your father, she screamed. This answer stunned the Hyuga. Unsure how to react, they laughed, what a prankster. He used you himself, and then forbade us. Natsu was already expecting it to be over, but they hastened to dissuade her, do you really think you're the only one who'll have him? They winked at her simultaneously. The teacher was laid back on the tatami. Hanabi continued to play the role of the man, while Hinata settled on her face. The girls were also at the finish line. Encouraged by the acceleration of the end, they allowed themselves a little roughness towards their partner. Natsu continued to passively accept everything, as she had not yet recovered from the pleasure she had received. Now she was acting as a doll to satisfy desires. The girls finished simultaneously, not forgetting to suppress their. Afterwards, they left the nanny and headed back to the hot spring to relax. Time passed, and their brother still hadn't returned. The girls were starting to get bored. They sent the nanny to the store to get something to eat. Even idleness can become tiresome, as the heiresses had learned from their own experience. The hot spring no longer offered the same warm bliss, so their only entertainment was conversation. "I wonder where Niji is now?" Hinata asked thoughtfully. "He's always trusted with the most dangerous missions," the younger sister dismissed, "but still, being late, especially on a holiday, is completely unacceptable." Each of them was lost in their own thoughts. The younger Hyuga even started blowing bubbles out of boredom, until another idea occurred to her. She jumped out of the water in a flash and rushed to the locker room. Hinata didn't have time to ask her purpose and only voiced her thoughts. What did she cook again? The girl flew into the locker room like a bullet. She was always so impulsive. Some plan would emerge, and the little sister would immediately rush to execute it. Her eyes instantly found the required drawer with her things. While the kunoichi was rummaging through her things, she heard the sound of the door opening behind her. She turned around, hoping that it was Natsu returning with snacks, but she was mistaken. Niji stood in the doorway. He was wearing his usual clothes, slightly dirty. It became clear that the boy had returned straight here from a mission. "Hello, Hanabi," he said calmly. The girl only quickly nodded. In response to the greeting. She was still standing in a hunched position and did not immediately realize that she was completely in front of him. "Sorry," the boy turned away. Her face instantly flushed with embarrassment and her hands grabbed the first towel that came to hand to cover her intimate parts. "You should have knocked." She turned away, offended. Hanabi inwardly shuddered. She knows perfectly well that the Niji of the exam and the Niji of today are completely different people. He lacks the anger and envy that had driven him to mock his sister back then. And his old feelings are understandable. Hinata is the heiress to the main clan, its future head, and all the houses will be tools in her hands. But tools must be in strong and capable hands, and at that time, the princess of the Byakugan gave no reason to think so. She was just a shy and weak girl, and naturally, her talented brother was unwilling to submit to a weak hand. Nevertheless, the years had improved his character, revealing to him the truth upon which the entire world is built, and with it came wisdom and humility. The boy sighed and sat down on a bench. He hung his head dejectedly, lost in thought. It was clear that something was bothering him. Hanabi always acted haughtily in his presence and looked at him with disdain. The brother was the first to break the awkward silence. "I can clearly see that you are confused, maybe even furious." The blood vessels near his eyes swelled. "This happens every time you see me. Tell me, what is bothering you?" The girl was silent. The ninja continued, "I am your brother and your servant. Can there be walls between us? How can I fulfill my duty if I do not know what lies in the heart of the soul of our clan? Come on, let's not talk about it." The sister was about to leave, but was stopped when the guest gently took her hand. "I understand why you hate me, and I repent with all my heart for my actions. Forgive me, I did not mean to offend you." Hanabi lowered her eyes. Despite her disgust for her past actions, she still understood that anyone can make a mistake and it is foolish to hold anger in their heart towards a reformed person. "I'm the one who should apologize." He let go of his hand and headed for his locker, "not just for that incident, but also for losing my temper and pressuring you." The girl watched him go. The knowledge of his correction firmly took root within her. He's not the type to forget his mistakes. People like him bear them proudly and draw wisdom from them. She ran up and hugged him from behind. "I acted stupidly, I'm not a girl anymore." The kunoichi showed all her tenderness in the embrace. "I accept you. Moreover, today is a holiday and we must show each other our love." She turned him around and captured his lips. Her brother was a little taken aback by the surprise, but he pulled himself together and responded to the kiss properly. Who knew that years of anger could be removed with a simple heart-to-heart talk? Hanabi, without breaking the kiss, took off the guy's clothes. Now before her was not the boy from her childhood, but a mighty and wise warrior, whose body bore the scars of many battles. She pulled back and ran her finger along the round scar near his shoulder. "Where is he from?" her sister asked quietly. "A sound ninja, Kidamaru. One of the strongest and most gifted I have ever met. The battle with him taught me much." The girl kissed the place where the wound had once been. The boy felt all the passion poured into the kiss. He looked at her shyly, not expecting her attitude to change so abruptly. Hyuga wanted to hug his relative tightly in a fit of emotion, but she stopped him. She pointed to the floor, inviting him to lie down, which he obediently did. "Sorry, little brother, but today you're going to pay for everything." Hanabi stood over him so that his gaze could see everything intimate, hidden under the towel. "I hope you can hold your breath for a long time." "Wah?" Niji wanted to ask, but his sister quickly sat on his face, cutting him off. The kunoichi settled more comfortably. She gently ran her hand through her partner's hair and silently thanked the clan's tradition of shaving facial hair. She didn't have to wait long before he began caressing her with his tongue. "Be more gentle, I might get angry." Niji meekly fulfilled his assigned role. He gently, his sister's intimate area, giving her the necessary pleasure. They both felt a heat in their loins at the same time, but reacted to it differently. The girl moved more energetically on her partner's face. She rubbed herself against his tongue, taking the dominant position and not caring about the comfort of the one below. Hyuga, in response to his growing arousal, worked his tongue more actively. He liked his sister's initiative and tried to keep up with her movements. "Oh yes. You're a good boy," she cried, climbing off his head, "but I'm hungry for something. So I can't wait to get to know you better." And again, the guy was surprised by his sister's activity. She unceremoniously pulled down his pants and pressed her lips to his firm dignity. He felt completely helpless before her persistence and decided it was best not to interfere. Hanabi covered her partner's, with kisses along its entire length. Reaching the head, she opened her mouth and placed it inside. Niji felt her tongue and lips working vigorously. Never had he wanted to, like he did now. However, he held back. According to tradition, Hyuga men are expected to demonstrate restraint, first and foremost. This includes during intimacy. Therefore, for him, would be a sign of defeat. The girl took this tradition as a challenge. She strove to swallow her brothers, as deeply as possible, simultaneously working her tongue. Each action was performed with utmost diligence, and her partner had to grit his teeth to keep from making a sound. "Hold back as much as you like, but I'll still get what I want." She released his, and moved downward. She kissed its base and gradually moved toward his scrotum. Meanwhile, her hand made quick, rhythmic up and down movements. Her fingers moved easily over his, thanks to the lubrication from his saliva. Hanabi gently kissed the leather sack. Periodically, she took one of his balls into her mouth and. But the rapid, and oral, still didn't produce the desired results. The boy didn't utter a sound. "I must commend you for your fortitude," she said, deciding to move on to the next step. The kunoichi stood up and shifted so that her, was above his pelvis. She squatted down and took his, in her hand. Guiding it, she sat down completely. The rather abrupt, made her let out a soft, and the boy once again held back. Having coped with the influx of sensations, she vigorously moved back and forth. Hanabi was no longer a girl, Niji should understand that by now. She straddled him, gripping him tightly with her hips, and vigorously performed her movements. The Hyuga still didn't, but he was already breathing heavily. To an outside observer, it might seem like he wasn't enjoying himself, but that was not true. Only thanks to his immense self-control was he able to keep the sounds inside. The girls of the Hyuga clan have an advantage over others when it comes to giving pleasure. Chakra flows control all processes in the body, including sensations. By stroking or pressing certain chakra points, one can both channel pleasure and control its concentration. Yes, the Hyuga girls can rightfully be called true succubi. Hanabi has proven herself to be a true demon. She concentrated her pleasure at the most unexpected moments, forcing Niji to make sounds louder than a simple breath. By increasing the intensity of the incoming signals, she made his body writhe with passion. She simply needed to overcome his self-control. Then she could make him vulnerable. The perfect revenge for his sister. The girl acted with all her heart, exerting every ounce of strength at her disposal. And just as the peak of pleasure was approaching, the boy let out a loud groan. It worked, the Hyuga cried out joyfully, and, inspired, increased her speed. But she was stopped. The kunoichi felt a touch on her shoulder. She stopped and turned around. Her older sister stood behind her, smiling slyly. "So why did you start this without me?" she asked, with justification. Niji saw her older sister. Pleasure rushed to his head, and he didn't know how to react to the situation. The boy was both happy that she had joined in and uncomfortable with the situation. "We're just getting warmed up, there's always room for you, little sister," Hanabi winked at her. "In that case, give up your seat," she said, approaching the couple. Through the haze of lust, the brother only now realized how uninhibited his sisters were. He had no idea they could act like this. As the saying goes, still waters run deep. Hanabi climbed off her brother. She returned to her previous position, his face. "You'll have to try again, little brother." She then added, "Besides, you're not allowed to look at the heiress of the clan while she's satisfying you." The younger Hyuga laughed. At that moment, Hinata knelt down and carefully took his, in her hand. He was all slippery, covered in his sister's lubricant, but all the better, it was easier to work with her hand. She appreciated his immodest size and felt him pulsate in her palm. The elder Hyuga, unlike her sister, didn't rely on speed. She gently, her relative, doing everything carefully and slowly. He appreciated this approach and, despite the, on his face, groaned. "So you started, so quickly," the younger girl felt a twinge of jealousy. In general, he couldn't be blamed. The heiress had cheated a little and stimulated the chakra points. She was better at this than her sister. Add in the gentle touches, and the pleasure was truly heavenly. Then she took a break and touched the head with her lips. A firm kiss, and he was already disappearing into her mouth. Hinata tried to take him as deep as she could, but without persistent training, she would hardly be able to do it. Nevertheless, her head began to move rhythmically. Hanabi watched her sister's progress. Heated by the oral, she wanted to help. She watched, mesmerized, as Hinata struggled to fully accommodate Niji's, but despite her best efforts, there remained a gap the width of 2 fingers between her lips and her pubic area. Waiting for the moment when the Byakugan princess raised her head to inhale, she stopped the movement and pressed down with her hand. Taken by surprise, Hinata grabbed the mat with her hands and tried to rise, but her mischievous sister laughed and continued. "Sis, you lack persistence. Try again, with my help, you'll succeed." The princess listened and began another attempt. When she stopped, indicating she couldn't go any further, Hanabi pressed down with her hand, and now the space between her lips and pubic area was less than a finger's width. Then her lover suddenly pulled back and coughed. Hadn't been in vain, and it required practice. So she decided to please her brother in a different way. She straddled him, just as his girlfriend had done earlier. The sisters sat facing each other. They smiled at this development and got to work. They moved back and forth in sync, in unison. Today had been the most eventful day of their lives. Even though Niji's day had been somewhat dull, he wasn't sad at all. And why be sad? He was having a wonderful time in the company of 2 girls considered among the most beautiful in the village. So he not only enjoyed it but also tried to keep up. Hanabi was noticeably aroused. Thanks to this, her secreted enough lubricant to keep his tongue from drying out. Nevertheless, he was noticeably tired. The same couldn't be said for his lower half. He tried to move in rhythm with his sister, giving her additional pleasure and making the task easier. "Listen," Hinata said, "your brother's trying hard." "I know, he's quite a skilled tongue," the younger sister agreed. To spice things up, the younger Hyuga reached for her sisters. She really enjoyed watching them bounce with every movement. She lightly touched them from below, assessing their weight. "They're heavy," she commented. "You bet," her sister replied, chuckling. Hinata closed her eyes in pleasure. It was hard for her to cope with the flood of sensations. The reason for this was the guy's dignity. She couldn't even suspect that there could be such a difference between a real and an artificial phallus. However, the kunoichi continued, trying not to lose her pride in front of her relative. Hanabi noticed how difficult it was for her friend. Therefore, this only provoked her in her play with. She gently nudged them, spanking them lightly, listening to her sister's soft. And when her fingers lightly pinched her, a feminine squeal could be heard. At some point, Niji grabbed the heiress by the hips. Then his pelvis began thrusting furiously. Hinata couldn't take it anymore, her arms gave way, and she fell onto her brother's torso. Her head ended up in front of her. Sisters. Inspired by this reaction, he maintained his rhythm. The girls shuddered with each thrust, and the locker room filled with the loud slaps of male body against female. The younger Hyuga saw her sister's ample backside shake with each thrust. She didn't like this treatment. "Hey, be careful with her," she said harshly, pressing her into his face. Her brother didn't hear her, or didn't want to hear her. With the tenacity of an experienced man, he continued to, his future mistress. She no longer resisted his advances and lay quietly, passively accepting his. But at some point, her eyes widened, she rose, and fell back with a loud. White drops appeared from her. Hanabi realized they both came at the same time. "That's not fair," the kunoichi said, offended. The day went on as usual. Kushina spent it in the kitchen. She had to prepare lunch for her husband and son before they came home. The entire kitchen filled with the enticing aromas of food, which wafted out into the street and made passers-by drool. She felt at home cooking. It helped to temper her impulsive nature, for which Minato was deeply grateful. Besides, time flew by while doing it. But the hot day and the steam from the food took their toll. Sweat trickled down her delicate skin. So she had to forego outerwear and do her chores in an apron and there was at least an hour left before anyone was expected, so she would have time to get dressed. Absorbed in her chores, she didn't notice her son's arrival, despite the way he casually tossed his shoes by the entrance. Today, training ended earlier than usual, meaning there would be more time to rest. He was about to go into his room when he stopped near the kitchen. The door was slightly open, and his eyes fell on his mother cooking. But his gaze fell not on the cooking, but on something else. His mother's revealing outfit stunned him. Her tempting buttocks, left uncovered, made his friend assume a fighting stance. His pants felt rather tight. Kushina casually continued chopping vegetables and throwing them into the pot, unaware of the involuntary observer. This was only to his advantage, as remaining unnoticed ensured the continuation of the enjoyable spectacle. Uzumaki had always been considered one of the most beautiful in the village. All the men envied Minato, and when he became Hokage, they weren't surprised by the choice. Such a beauty was worthy only of a ruler. Naruto agreed with everyone on this point. Her firm, full buttocks, rounded hips, toned legs, and, looking higher, her slender waist, large, slender arms, and beautiful face, all of this had driven the boy wild since childhood. He always sneaked peeks at her, and his erection invariably rose every time he fantasized. He suddenly wanted to run up and pounce on this woman like a wild animal. But Uzumaki restrained himself. His imagination conjured up images of his hands untying her, and pulling down her, and it took all his strength not to start, right there, behind the door. At some point, his mother turned sideways. Despite her apron and, the shape of her, became visible. This made the son's gaze even more captivated. He was unable to tear his eyes away from such a sight. Suddenly, the girl looked straight at him. Apparently, her well-developed intuition told her about the observer. Naruto jumped back in surprise and fell on his butt. A woman's laughter rang out. "You're so funny," she wiped away the tears that had appeared from her laughter. Kushina went up to her son and helped him up. She had been gentle and kind until the moment she realized why he was looking at her so intently. A deafening slap rang out. Are you completely out of your mind? She shouted at the boy angrily. Oh, this impulsive nature, her characteristic trait. What's my fault? You dressed like that yourself. Uzumaki carefully dodged another portion of slaps. Oh, yeah, right, it's just too hot today, that's why I dressed like that. Sorry, she delivered another blow, but next time, announce your arrival loudly. The woman thought about the lustful look the boy had on her face. It was understandable, he was no longer a child, and she was still in her prime. Besides, today was a special day, so his behavior became even more understandable. Meanwhile, the Jinchuriki approached and hugged his mother. She was a little taken aback by this, but nevertheless accepted him into her embrace. She felt his hands move lower down her back to the small of her back. So, what are you doing? Aren't you ashamed to do this to your mother? Today is a day when we can safely forget about such conventions, he said and looked straight into the woman's violet eyes. Oh, yes, I completely forgot, I take it that you want right now. Yeah. Okay, then come with me. Uzumaki knew about her son's depraved nature, so it was useless to stop him. Better to get down to it quickly, so that he leaves you alone about this. Even on this day, she couldn't forget about their family ties and saw her son as a son, not a potential lover. The Uzumaki clan had always had its own secret and stood apart from the rest of Konoha's inhabitants. The blonde obediently followed her. As it turned out, she had brought him to his own room. However, he didn't care where they did it, although his parents' bed would clearly be more comfortable. So, what do you want? She asked frankly. The boy was taken aback by such a blunt question. His mother had always been known for her impulsiveness, and apparently her ardor manifested itself in intimate matters as well. I don't even know, we'll see how it goes. In that case, hold on. She gave her son a sharp push. He fell onto the bed. Without waiting for him to realize what was happening, the woman pulled his pants down in one jerk. A decent-sized erection appeared. Just like Dad's, flashed through her mind. The bloody habanero quickly grabbed the blonde's, and latched onto it with her mouth. A deep kiss followed, after which his disappeared into her mouth. Naruto felt her tongue pleasantly caress his friend. His mother held him tightly with her lips and moved her head up and down. He even groaned with pleasure. His hands settled on the top of his mother's head and pressed down, urging his partner to take him all the way in. The woman granted his whim. It wasn't easy, as her son's size was comparable to his father's. Nevertheless, she suppressed her gag reflex and was able to take him inside. Wow, the boy commented on this picture. I think it's time to move on to the main part. In the blink of an eye, Kushina was on the bed in a reclining position. She spread her legs wide and removed her, revealing the full beauty of her. Uzumaki was even stunned by this. He'd only ever glimpsed this intimate place, and not even all of it. But now it was all there, a neat vulva and the reddish fuzz on her pubic hair. Come on, lover, she playfully winked at him and beckoned with her finger. It didn't take much persuasion, as Naruto was immediately in the right position. He smelled the pleasant scent emanating from his mother, previously unfamiliar to him. It made his blood boil and rush to his head. Two faces, mother and son, were facing each other at a fairly close distance. Passion sparked in their eyes. They could no longer resist, and a kiss ensued. The boy liked that the woman kissed him like a man and sincerely, and not like a son. Only now did the woman feel a gentle warmth between her legs. Arousal began to flare within her. This could very well be due to the unique resemblance between the son and the father, which caused secret memories to surface. Ah, to hell with these formalities, she promised herself and decided to let loose. While they were kissing, the Jinchuriki decided to get down to business. He placed his against her labia. A gentle push was all it took, and he was inside. A surge of unimaginable pleasure washed over him. It became necessary to exert every possible effort to avoid, immediately. Every movement caused a new explosion of sensation. Only after some time did he manage to adapt to the pleasure and develop a steady rhythm. A feeling of pride overwhelmed Naruto. Such a gorgeous woman was now his. Kushina relaxed. Her young and passionate lover was doing all the work. Hot blood completely overwhelmed him, and he became like a wild animal during breeding season. By the way, I know you were spying on me and Minato. What? The unexpected truth brought him back to his senses. His movements slowed a little, but did not stop. Yes, it's easy to notice an open door, even during. Who would have thought you were a little, right? Well, yes. The woman grabbed him sharply by the back. Well, show me everything you wanted to do to me while you, watching us. A slight fear took hold of the guy. His partner had such a look, consisting of a mixture of madness and arousal. That it was burning. Now it became clear to him why they called her the bloody habanero. But a surge of lust completely suppressed the fear. He returned to the state when he frantically had, with his mother's womb. The entire bed shook from his friction, and Kushina leaned back and, loudly. At this rate, even passers-by would hear. But that's not important. The main thing is the process. His hand reached for her. Immediately a light slap made him stop trying to carry out this act. What? Why not? The guy asked, bewildered. You haven't earned it yet, she winked at him. And how can I earn it? You'll find out. I had to accept it. But I didn't have to be sad for long. The pleasant sensations of, completely drove all bad thoughts out of my head. My mother's, was so hot it was ready to burn. She was oozing with pleasure, so every thrust was accompanied by a, squelch. Oh yes. Harder, the woman exclaimed. Naruto gladly complied. He increased his speed to maximum. His legs even started to cramp from unaccustomed sensations, but he didn't care at all. He gave himself completely to the process. He wasn't even bothered by the sweat that had broken out on his forehead from the effort. Suddenly, she pushed him away. He looked at her in bewilderment. You would have, right now, do you really think I can't predict it? Noticing his state, Uzumaki admitted she was right. He really was ready to release his entire load from his scrotum if not for her intervention. Pondering the whole process during a brief moment of rest, the boy realized that his mother had managed him well. She would make a good mistress. He needed to make the most of today. While her son was pondering this, his mother dropped to the floor and got on her hands and knees. She wiggled her but slightly, urging the young man to continue his pursuit. He complied. But the Jinchuriki was in no hurry. He wanted to tease his partner a little. He lightly stroked her hips and butt. She shook her nervously, begging him to insert her, but he wasn't so easy to get. So his advances continued. Next, the blonde ran the tip of his, over his mother's labia. He pressed lightly and parted them. Kushina expected, but her partner only ran them again. Just inserted already, she couldn't resist. The perfect moment had arrived. Naruto thrust sharply with his pelvis, her fully. The woman screamed with pleasure. The guy grabbed her hips and began to do what she so desired. Having received what she needed, she practically began to sing with her. Magnificent. The sound of two bodies slapping echoed throughout the apartment. Habanero prayed for only one thing, that no one would disturb them. She dug her fingers into the floor, almost scratching it. Her jaw clenched tightly to withstand all the pleasure. A pretty sight presented itself to the guy. The beautiful back of a perfect woman. And if you look from the side, you can see gorgeous, even. An idea for fun occurred to him. One slight movement and the knot came undone. The straps immediately fell, pulling the cups with them. Kushina panicked and tried to grab them, but was stopped by a man's hand. I think I've earned the right to look at them. Uzumaki gave him a look full of anger and admiration. Anger, because they went against her plans, and admiration, for her son's courage. Even from the side, they still looked magnificent. In the next pose, he would definitely get a better look. But his dignity decided otherwise. The pressure from his balls transferred to his, and he, the most, he'd ever seen. And all of it inside Konoha's finest woman. She responded with a loud. Her body shook, signaling her. Naruto slapped her ass and pulled out. But it was still worth watching. So he lifted the woman, still in a haze of pleasure, and turned her toward him. Finally, the moment he'd been waiting for had arrived. Large, firm, and shapely, were right in front of him. Firm, bloodshot, looked up at him, enticingly inviting him to touch them. Wonderful, was all he could say, looking at it. But he wasn't about to use his hands now. The day was still long, so the pleasure should be prolonged. So he kissed each mound and carried his partner to the bed. Kushina remained in complete bliss for a while longer. But she soon came to her senses. She realized her son had gone to the shower. That was good, now she could rest. However, the boy might still get aroused and attack her, so she should get dressed. Black leggings turned out to be the only suitable option, since the rest of her was in the wash. Well, that'll be quite enough, Uzumaki concluded, not realizing her mistake. Mikoto was getting bored at home, so she decided to go for a walk. It had been a while since she'd been outside the clan's estates, so she chose the market. The maids could buy everything, of course, but sometimes it was nice to go for a walk on her own. She chose a black kimono with white trim for her outing. She quite liked the outfit, and when she put it on, she was disappointed that she hadn't worn it before. She also had to assign a couple of servants to carry everything carefully if she made any purchases. She was sure her presence would attract unnecessary attention. Every shopkeeper would want such a noble woman as the wife of the chief of police to buy from them. Therefore, the servants would also act as security. The Uchiha was about to leave the house when she encountered her son on the street. "Where are you going?" Sasuke asked. The kunoichi smiled. True to form, he always remained taciturn. "To the market. Want to walk with me?" "Yes." And so they set off. Mother and son walked ahead, and the servants followed. They walked in silence. Mikoto always loved these walks. You didn't even have to speak and still enjoy each other's company. She calmly admired the village, while the boy, as always, was lost in his thoughts. On this day, the entire village blossomed. People rejoiced in the holiday and filled the shops and eateries. The signs were covered with posters. One of them even caught the woman's eye, "Today only. Show at Ramen Ichiraku. Watch the famous Tuchi cook ramen and fry his daughter at the same time. I'll have to check it out," she muttered her thoughts out loud. Soon the procession reached the market. Mikoto walked leisurely past the stalls, examining the wares. The servants were tense, ready to rush off and buy something at her word. However, she was selective and could see from afar which shops were worth visiting and which weren't. She was right. Her appearance caused a real sensation. All the vendors immediately began calling her over, creating a real commotion. The servants didn't even have time to give them the hush sign before new ones started talking. "Oh, my God," she said with disappointment. "It's like this every time." "Then let's hide from them," the boy said calmly, then added, "and from the servants, too." The woman immediately caught what he was getting at. She agreed and decided to choose her moment. As soon as the servants were distracted by yet another shopkeeper, the Uchiha quickly disappeared into the crowd. From there, it was up to the son. He led her by the hand, skirting the crowd. At some point, the boy turned behind some benches, and their path led beyond them. Memories were carefully awakened. Mikoto felt like a young girl again, who also loved to play pranks with her future husband. A forgotten sense of adventure, so inherent in young men and women, was flaring up within her. Meanwhile, while the woman was lost in her thoughts, they were already moving through the back streets until they reached a dead end. It was surprisingly quiet here, as there were absolutely no people. The only sounds came from the windows above, but that was enough to relax. "So why did we come?" she played along with her son. "No one will disturb us here. So we can get down to business, as always. I'm eager for a repeat of what happened this morning." "I have no doubt." She approached the shinobi. He stood calmly and patiently awaited her action. It was not difficult to understand his desires. The mother's hands untied the purple sash and dropped it to the ground. Then she lowered his pants and loincloth. His was already erect and, freed from clothing, looked proudly at the woman. "And how long has it been like this?" The mother took it and began to run her hand along its entire length. "Very." Mikoto began. She wrapped her lips around the head and slowly began to. Her mouth was gentle, not missing a single centimeter of the sensitive spot. Gradually, his member disappeared further and further into her mouth. Sasuke felt his mother's hands move. Her deft fingers gently caressed his scrotum. With each stroke, his member invariably throbbed in his mother's mouth. She was only too happy about this and worked harder. The boy watched as the woman's head moved. Rhythmically, providing unforgettable sensations. The woman handled her mouth with great skill, forcing his organ to send one pleasant shock after another to his. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. His hands grabbed her head. Mikoto knew exactly what would come next and, herself. His pelvis immediately began moving furiously, pushing his, deep into her throat. She could only tighten her lips around it for better stimulation. "Oh yes," her son burst out. He began to make sounds of heavy breathing. The Uchiha vigorously pounded his mother's mouth, shuddering with each surge of pleasure. He so desperately wanted it to never end. However, there was still so much to experience. So he pulled out. The woman wiped her mouth of saliva and patiently waited for his next move. He didn't keep her waiting long before saying, "Take off your clothes. What if they see us?" She was momentarily frightened. Sasuke looked at the windows above and said, "If you're quiet, no one will find out." The kunoichi trusted him. She threw off her kimono, revealing only her. Under her son's strict supervision, she had to get rid of that, too. He nodded approvingly and then pointed to a pile of boxes nearby. His desires were once again clear at a glance. Mikoto gracefully walked up to them and bent over, giving the boy a full view of her assets. Impatient, he quickly approached her and grabbed her ass. She barely restrained herself from. Meanwhile, her son continued. He vigorously kneaded her exquisite buttocks, leaving no trace of her firm curves unnoticed. His hand circled her hips and, touching her pubis, descended to her. The Uchiha felt his fingers find her. At the same time, his other hand fell on her lush bust. Sasuke began working with both limbs. While one quickly rubbed the sensitive nub, the other kneaded and pinched the pleasant. "Oh yes," came a motherly whisper. Mikoto struggled to keep from making any sounds. She obediently played the role of a puppet in her son's hands, who could do with her as he pleased. This added a special depravity to the moment. But the young man couldn't linger for long. So his hand released her, and guided his, to the desired spot. His, parted her labia and, causing his partner to shudder. Hot, youthful blood rushed to his head. The shinobi immediately began to actively thrust, skipping the initial warm-up. He grabbed the unoccupied, with his free hand, and the characteristic sounds of male body slapping against female body rang out. Each thrust of her son was followed by a surge of sensation. The woman closed her eyes in pleasure and threw her head back onto her partner's chest. He pounded her so hard that she couldn't even stand. She listened intently to his animalistic breathing and begged him not to stop. Her womb was ablaze with excitement. He could feel her muscles contracting with his erection. It was quite pleasant to know your lover was in seventh heaven thanks to you. Drops of natural lubrication fell to the ground. Any resident would have glanced out the window and immediately noticed the couple copulating. However, the sounds of everyday life were completely drowned out by the slaps and splashes, and their whispers were so quiet that they didn't even reach the windows. How wonderful, the kunoichi continued to whisper about her condition to her son, encouraging him to continue in the same spirit, "You are the most passionate lover." It was impossible to even imagine the attraction she would feel for her own son. He proved himself to be quite a passionate and skilled lover. In his arms, her youth and old passions returned. She wanted to belong to him and only him. Sasuke was completely satisfied with his lover's reaction. His plan to subjugate his own mother was coming to fruition. He had no intention of stopping, even after the holiday. No, she would belong only to him. Filled with boundless lust, Mikoto imagined herself a courtesan servicing an insatiable warrior. She passionately, her son, moving her pelvis. It was difficult, as the pleasure became unbearable. It was so exciting, hiding in an alley, risking discovery. What would it take for a salesman to walk a few meters behind his counter to the entrance between buildings? Or for a resident to peer out the window out of curiosity? Such feelings made her knees tremble. The excitement boiled her blood even more, fueling her passion. The woman cast aside any gracefulness inherent in a noble woman, transforming herself into an aroused female, demanding only, with her master. All her depravity came to the surface thanks to her son's efforts. And for this, she was sincerely grateful to him. "I'm going to," the boy muttered through clenched teeth, "right in, you." Mikoto didn't even resist. She wanted to properly thank her partner. So she prepared herself to receive his. Sasuke had been right. Soon, his began to pulsate distinctly and released a portion of into her. He performed a few more thrusts, recovering from his, and then pulled out. The Uchiha volunteered to help him. She knelt down and pressed her mouth to his. She had to thoroughly clean it of the mixture of lubricant and. The woman diligently performed her duty, after which she gave the boy her most tender smile. A tickling sensation appeared in her. The mother realized it was, dripping down her thighs onto the ground. Excellent, she happily concluded her walk. The Uchihas dressed quickly. The servants must have caused quite a commotion while searching for their mistress. So they hurried, so as not to cause panic.